Hi all, and that was Henry Mancini's Love Theme. We all need a lot more love in our lives. Tonight's guest is Hayden Ellis, one of the members from THI, and he's going to be telling us his life story and some of his paths and journeys he's been on. And this should be a really interesting chat in many ways. At the end of Hayden's show, I'm going to do a piece that is an update piece of what's going on currently and what is possible to expect and what not to expect, who the issue is and who not the issue is. So that will be at the end of the show. So let's get on with it. Hi Hayden, how are you?
G'day Thomas, thank you for having me on the show and for everything you and the crew at THI do.
Well, we've come a long way. You know, we've only, people forget, we've only been going, 20 months now with THI, and it feels like a few lifetimes, but it's only 20 months.
There's been a lot in there.
Yeah, we've covered so much, and we've pulled people in from all around the world, including yourself. Literally all the way around the world.
Yeah, strong Aussie contingent, that's for sure.
Yeah, and we've had members from the UK, and we've had members from Ireland and Canada, and also Holland. So this show platform has kind of hopped around the world a bit, which is good. You know, it's not all about America. Sometimes we forget that because the show is from America, but it's not all about America, even though a lot of the issues going on are.
Yeah, well, we're coming. We're in the top 5. We're doing all right here. We're a nice cabal stronghold. So.
Yes, except your cabal stronghold is a bit more obvious, because you still carry the Union Jack in many parts. It's kind of hidden more here. So,
oh, right, okay.
Yeah.
No, it's out in the open here. There's no hiding it.
It may be called the Stars and Stripes, but it's still the same colours as the Union Jack. And that's something
still crown court. Yeah.
So, we're going to get into some of your stuff. Childhood, a kind of a sensitive nature, but with high empathy and a strong sense of justice. So where do you think all that came from, and where did it lead to?
Well, that was the reason that I chose Henry Mancini as the first song. As a child, I was extremely sensitive and had a very strong empathy, and music like that would always make me cry, and I had no idea why or anything like that. There wasn't anything wrong in my life or anything at a time, but as a very young boy, I was hypersensitive to anything that sort of had emotional content like that. And I went to heavy metal, of course, when I got into my late teens, but early on that sort of music really, I found it very upsetting for no reason that I really understood. And along with that sort of empathy was a strong sense of justice, and the world didn't make much sense to me that people would be cruel to each other and all of the sort of basic things that went on at school or at home or amongst parents or anything like that. And so my childhood was one a little bit where I was a little bit confused as far as the world was concerned around me, but it was even more confusing, I should say, when it came to dreams and some other sort of things that were going on throughout my childhood, which settled down, I have to admit, I think once I went through puberty. A lot of it sort of disappeared, but I was having very profound experiences as a child that I couldn't explain, and I knew instinctively not to tell anybody about it or ask anybody what was happening, and I never did. So the THI, the first people, along with the CIA, I'm sure, if there might be a token CIA member listening, they'll be the first to sort of hear it. And one of them, which I thought that Chloe probably might be able to give me a bit of an idea about what was going on. I used to regularly have a dream where I would, to the right of my bed, a portal would open. Not that I knew that it's only now that I can call it a portal, but at the time it was sort of a black tunnel would open, and I could hear laughing coming from the tunnel, and a sort of a bearded man in a black robe would be walking through the tunnel. And strangely enough, as he came to enter the room, he would change into like a big ape, and I would be physically tortured by this creature. So it would grab my leg, and like a camel bite where I don't know if you know what that is, it's when you take your hand and you grab someone just above the kneecap and you squeeze as hard as you can. Well, that would be done to my leg. Oh. And it was physical pain, absolute agony. And it took me a long time to figure out that I was in a dream and then how to get out of it. So I started to develop mechanisms. And what happened was, after a few years, 2 or 3 years of that occurring, that torture dream occurring, and I started to work out ways to get out, there was attempts being made on my life all the time in the dream worlds, trying to run me over with trucks and drown me and all sorts of things. And just as I was going to be killed, I would be able to wake myself up. Yeah. And I was doing this all throughout my childhood. I was having these profound dreams, and people were basically trying to get me, and the physical pain was real. And I worked out a system of escaping, essentially. So that
good stuff. I just want to go back a bit. The entity that came out, was it a hooded robe?
Yes. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
But it transformed into an ape-like creature as it came to the edge of the doorway.
The second being will be 7 to 8 foot, all brown, and not much in the way of facial features. No,
that's right. That's exactly right. I thought it was an ape. I used to describe it as an ape to myself.
It looks, that's the nearest description. I've encountered both of those. One's easy to do than the other.
What is it? What was it? Has it got a name or anything? Or
it's probably related to a rather ancient race, and people will go, well, it's the Sasquatch. It can look like that. It's a derivative of it. They had the ability to phase shift, like the Yeti and the Sasquatch and all the other different names, the abominable snowman. They are able to project an image into your mind so that you think you are looking at a tree when it's actually you're looking at them, but you can't see it. So they are able to phase shift. Now the robed is what is more commonly known as the Jesuit entity.
Right.
And some of them have some of them are physical and will attack. Some of them, if you challenge them and use whatever weapon you have, I don't want to put that out, but whatever weapon that, of your choice, if you hit it with whatever, sometimes it's empty, so it's just a projection. But there is some.
Okay, well, I was always frozen solid. Yeah. So whenever, as soon as the port was here,
this is more for the benefit of the people who may still see these beings. So you've got to assume that all of them are physical and attack them in that way. You will find if you slice some of them, if there's nothing there, It's just a protection to make you look like you look here while the real one is standing behind you, causing damage. So just slash all of them. Now the other, the other being are far. Again, it depends on your choice of weapon. The best way to get rid of that is to go above it and drop the sword through its head.
Mm-hmm.
That's the best way to get rid of those type of beings. You have to go right down.
Okay.
The other, some of the reps, particularly the more nasty ones, you have to remove the head. So I hope that helps some of them people who are still facing these nightmares, and yes, they are real. And people go, no, it's not real, it's just a dream. Except, why are people coming back with injuries? You can understand from your point of view, it's difficult because you're a child, and of course children have wild imaginations, as we're told. No, actually, they have the real, they have the reality before it's imposed on them of what's normal and what's not. And so it's difficult. Was it really difficult? Because you couldn't talk to people, and what I want you to express is how that made you feel inside, the frustration or whatever it was at such a young age.
No, so it was a little bit different for me. I knew instinctively from a very early age that, and I describe it now as wasn't from here, but I definitely knew that what I was experiencing was, at the time, I thought it was completely unique to myself, and obviously it does happen to other people, but at the time I knew that no one would know. I knew that I was experiencing something unique, so I didn't feel frustrated, and I didn't feel like I needed to share it with anybody, but I did want to know what was going on. And I just knew that there was no one there that I could ask, so I never did.
Yeah.
And it didn't bother me in that way. You know, I had a very loving family and a great upbringing and a very happy upbringing and so on. But I never burdened anybody in my family with that. I just went through it solo, and that, I guess, was along with the dream side of things. But then also in waking times, I would see this shape in every pattern, bricks on a wall or dots on a carpet or whatever, which it's only in the last 10 years I was able to see that the pattern was essentially one unit of the seed of life. Yeah. And I couldn't look at anything without seeing the pattern. And I did have one point when I must have been about 8 years old where I thought, am I going insane because I can't look at anything without seeing this pattern? And then it was a few years later, again, I think probably post-puberty, that I didn't see it anymore. And I could make myself see it, but I couldn't make myself not see it. And it was almost like it was highlighted everywhere I looked, and I don't know if that was a message I was being given to pay attention to. I have absolutely no idea, but I finally saw it in the seed of life pattern, and that sort of, I guess, put it to bed. Anyway, it gave me peace on what that had been through my childhood.
So there's many aspects to this in where people are starting to notice it a lot more now, where suddenly a song comes into their head and you're singing one or two lines, and we have asked people on THI, write those down. If you remember, if a song comes in your head, write it down or go and check up the lyrics. You will find what you need from it. And these are more and more of the higher aspects of ourselves, it being able to interact with us. And that's increased over the last 4, 5, 6 years more than any other time. and suddenly you find information comes to you rather than you going looking for it, because that's the level you've reached, where once you I keep mentioning on the shows, open the doors, the doors will appear, but it's up for you to walk through it. And once you do walk through those doors, you've just opened yourself to a whole new field of information. It was always there. It was just on the other side of the door. You never realised it. But you've got to open it and then go through, and then suddenly it's like as though life itself changes. It's like a total transformation, because everything suddenly starts to make sense and dots are connected, and you think, oh wow, where did all this come from? Well, it came from you.
Yes.
I know people like to give me credit, and I do put stuff together well for the show so people can get a handle on certain things, but ultimately it's come from you. And how knowing what you knew then and what you'd experienced, and how was school?
School was fine. I mean, I'm definitely a dweller on two planets, I think, as we discussed before the show started. School was fine. I was intelligent enough to receive various academic awards, I think, every year. I had an art award at some stage. I played sport for various sporting teams. I was, however, young for the class that I was in, so everybody else was 6-8 months older than me, and that wasn't a problem until we got into puberty, and they're all, I was running races against men and all that sort of stuff. But at school, I went to I don't know what you call them in the UK. I think it's a bit different. The private schools here are the ones that you pay for, and most of my schooling was at a private school, and it was Protestant, which I now know is not a religion. Thank you, Thomas. It was rife with child abuse and pedophiles and all that sort of stuff. It was it wasn't great. It was an undercurrent. It wasn't overt or anything like that. And there were some great teachers there, and I had some very good experiences with extremely good teachers. And but then later on, I went to, for some reason, my parents took me out of that private school. They wanted to keep me there under scholarship to go, I think, into the program and become, one of the top students. I don't know what they call them. The students that walk around bossing other students around, telling them to pull their socks up. Whatever they are. They had me sort of tagged for all of that. But then must have been 14, I think, 13 or 14, they took me out. My brother went to a public school and I went to one of the state schools, and that was very different. So it was a very, very, very violent. I don't know. It was definitely a glitch in the matrix. The particular year I was in was incredibly violent. We had sons of drug dealers and guys that had come over from overseas that had been fighting pitch battles in the streets and rioting and all sorts of stuff. So it was a very dangerous place, the school that I went to, and having so much empathy, I found it quite difficult in that sense. But I ended up befriending every single different group. So I would spend lunchtimes, I'd go and have a cigarette with the bad guys, maybe have a bit of a fight or a wrestle, and then I'd go and talk to the trendy guys and play some sport with them, and go and sit down with the nerds and discuss the latest book they were reading or whatever. But I never fitted in anywhere, but I fitted in everywhere, which was quite strange. But I definitely had that. I was definitely detached from everybody. I could have meaningful conversations, and everybody, I could become very good friends with people, and I had a couple of 2 or 3 very good friends that I still am friends with that came out of that high school. But generally, I just knew that I was different, and I saw the world differently, and the things that people were taking as normal, I definitely didn't think that they were normal, and I believed in things like magic.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe that Tolkien could smoke opium and come up with a world like that. I just couldn't fathom. And studying his history a bit and realising his membership to various secret fraternities and so on, and being inducted into the primordial traditions and so on, he's had a great insight into all of the mystical traditions. And so, I just sort of knew instinctively that all of that stuff was real. And I just, like with my family, I just kept it all to myself and did what I had to do because I had so much empathy for people, and I wasn't mean or violent or anything.
No.
I never detached from the world. I never went into a depression or a cocoon or anything like that. I just lived like everybody else, but I just didn't think like everybody else.
No, and in essence, it kind of makes a lot of us that are in this community introvert. There are some because we've basically gone through our whole lives not being allowed to speak. So we've cut part of our life away because we go into situations, we go to parties, and it has got worse over the last 5 years as we've learned more and more of the real truth and not the BS that we've been told or given. We all realise now, and there's no doubt anymore, these people, we're not the same as them. We're just not. And the danger is, that sounds very like divide and conquer, but the frequency resonance is not the same. And
definitely.
Of course, we've had the issue or the theory, which I can't say it's 100%, but the more you look at it, it makes sense, is that we have a lot of people here that are not real, the synths. It kind of makes sense, even if you don't believe the figures. It does make sense because so many people lack that basic compassion, or empathy. They just got none. People die in the streets, and they're too busy filming it to put it on YouTube. And you think,
it's
are these people real? This is why I like this show, because it gives people a chance to basically unload their life where they haven't had opportunities to do so. Because we've all got a story.
Platform.
We've all got a story. It's not just me. We've all got our stories, and there's lots of people who have bottled up events that have happened in their life, like you mentioned before about the dreams, and because they're frightened because they think people will think they're insane. Well, actually, no, that's normal. There's no such thing as normal. It's very subjective, and their normal is certainly not our normal. This is real life, and it's real bruises and real injuries happening, and they can go and say whatever they like. But it has made a lot of us introverted and like shadow people in the background in many ways. And I'm just grateful that now so many people like yourself and all the others that have been on the show can come forward with the confidence of saying it as it is. They're not having to hold back because they're frightened of what someone might say, or whether they're going to roll their eyes or ridicule. Just, this is my life. Whether you like it or not, it's not my problem. That's yours.
You've provided the platform, Thomas, and that's that's a great gift that you've given all of us. And I knew that for me this would be quite cathartic to come on, and it's in a way it's accepting that that real part of me by putting it out there. I'm saying it's real, and the information that I've learnt over the last 15 years or so or more of seeking the truth, it's all real. You know, so it's an acknowledgement to my own subconscious, I guess, saying this is all real and it's all happening, and you know, getting a lot of this out as well is it's very spiritually healing, I think.
Absolutely.
So thank you.
This is us unraveling ourselves in many ways, because you have all this knowledge and all these experiences that are classed as not normal or not real or whatever they want to call it, but they're all part of you, and many other people who have been on. It is real, and it has happened. And then suddenly, you know, you want to tell the world, and then you find you can't. And that's the saddest thing, is that people's whole lives they've had to carry stuff around and not be able to share. You know, and this is what life's about. It's about sharing experiences and sharing realities and sharing opinions. You know, and it's important that everyone unpeels their own onion. And some of these things that you're covering and the other members that have been on are unpacking all that frustration.
Totally.
And you know, you then go forward, you know, and think. I know probably many. I've spoken to a lot of people after the shows. I feel a lot more free, a lot lighter.
Yeah,
because you're not carrying that.
I can feel it already. Yeah.
You're not carrying that pent up frustration around, and all this knowledge can just spit it out. You know, and then you think, you know what, that wasn't as bad as I thought. So, was it after school or during school or a bit of both? You went into martial arts?
Yeah, at 13, I very early on, I think I'd watched some martial art films and became quite enamoured with the idea of heroics and being able to dispense justice yourself, and also the fact that these particular figures were all portrayed as honourable and kind and gentle and so on these various programs, and I thought, you know, that's who I am. I'm definitely kind and gentle, and I want to protect people and look after them and all of that, but at the same time I want to be strong and able, you know, and capable. And at 13 I started Taekwondo, and 3 years or so after doing that I had a fight with the guy, and I was completely useless, so I gave it away. And I was at this particularly rough high school, and there was a friend there who was saying that I needed to go and do karate at a local school, and I just fobbed him off for quite some time, and eventually he just wouldn't let up, and eventually I got on my bike and I rode down there, and I walked straight into the dojo of Master Rao Kent, who was everything that these guys on these shows were being portrayed as, so a true martial arts master, and that led me down a path of discovery where, although he had done it through martial arts, he had developed superhuman capabilities, mystical capabilities, and the things that I saw him do, and I ended up writing a book about him specifically because I knew that people wouldn't believe that what he'd done was real, so I wrote a book about him while he was alive, so that if anybody had any... well, he died 5 years ago now, and my history with him was seven or 8 years, and then I went overseas and lived in Japan for a year, came back, and he had disappeared and the dojo was closed. And then it would have been 14 years later, I wrote an article about him and posted it on a training website that I was running, and one of the students who was still in contact with him contacted me and said that he'd seen the article and would I like to get in touch. So he was living in country Victoria, and I drove down there and saw him. We reacquainted, and 7.5 years after that, I went for my black belt, and so 14 years of training with him, with a 14-year break in between. And it's the whole story of him and everything I've experienced and what I learnt from him, and the sort of intuitive understanding of people that I've had led me into coaching. But some of what I really wanted to do by mentioning Raoul was just give the listeners at THI, just let you know, you're always talking about what people are really capable of and the fact that they don't really know themselves, and once they do understand who they are and so on, they're essentially going to liberate themselves. Well, he was a bookworm and had never had any combat experience right up until the age of 16. And then he was involved, he was attacked by a gang of youths and badly beaten. He and two friends were badly beaten, and he decided that he had to either learn how to run or learn how to fight, and he looked down at his legs and they were particularly short, so he decided he had no choice there, he was going to have to learn how to fight. So he went and began reading books. He did some boxing and wrestling, but realised that they were just forms of wearing opponents down, and that he needed to take his opponents out with one strike or one throw or one move or what have you. Yeah. And from 16 to 25, by the time he was 25, he was one of the greatest martial artists in the world. And what he had done was, if everybody did 100 repetitions of something, he did 1,000. He did 5,000 punches a day for a year, teaching himself how to punch. He did 1 million cup sweeps on a tree, learning how to sweep somebody. And he was no different to anybody else, other than he would set himself an objective and he would do it. And he was absolutely tireless in his work ethic. And he became a master of jiu-jitsu, judo and karate. He went 7 years undefeated in all forms of combat. Half of the weight division, if he changed weight divisions in a judo tournament, half the field would pull out. He told me some incredible stories of training with some of the Japanese masters, and one of those in particular was a master was giving a lecture on ki, which is the sharp expulsion of breath. It's a battle shout that you hear samurais and things are doing on movies all the time. And this Japanese master was saying that the breath is a force, the breath is a weapon, and you can use it to strike, and if you breathe towards the part of the body that you're kicking or punching or whatever, you can incrementally increase the damage done. And Rao didn't believe any of it, and he never said anything, but the master walked over at the end of the lecture and said, "You don't believe me, do you?" And Rao said, "I'm finding it very difficult to believe that what you're saying is true." And he said, "Well, come outside." And they walked out onto a balcony, and he said, "See that bird?" And he ki-eyed, and the bird fell out of the tree, dead. Yeah. And then he took Rao inside, and he said, "Let's fight." And he ki-eyed, and Rao was anchored to the ground and couldn't move, and he walked in and punched him and dropped him to the ground. And it was from then on, Rao realised, I've got to learn this stuff. I'm going to have to learn what all this stuff is. So he began learning all of the mystical aspects of the martial arts along with the technical aspects. And what ended up happening was, he was, like all of us, he was pushed in another direction. He was able to intuitively fix people that were suffering martial arts injuries in the dojos. He was putting shoulders back in and putting knees back in and all sorts of things. He'd never been trained at all. And he had a guy that was saying, you've got to open up a clinic. You've got to start fixing people. And he ended up he went and did a massage course and so on just to get a certificate. So he's effectively got his license to practice. You know, you've got to pay your tax to the cabal, you know, if you want to do anything. But he went and studied herbs, started making his own ointments, and he became a healer. So what he was doing was incredible, and what had happened, his life story, he had ended up in quite a war with the Chinese triads, and he had been poisoned by one of the heads. I can't mention any names, like you can't sometimes, Thomas. Or it's a bullet in the head, so I'll have to keep quiet about who's involved. But he was stabbed in the foot with a pinprick with a rare Chinese fish poison when he was having a discussion with one of these overlords, and he happened to have a doctor visit him who was one of his students, who looked down at his foot that was in a sandal at the time, and he said, you know, what's wrong with your foot? And it had turned blue, and he said, look, we're going to have to get you to hospital. So they rushed him to hospital, and they said, you've been poisoned. We don't know what with, or we don't have an antidote. We don't understand what it is. And the poison was going up his leg, and they said, we're going to have to take your leg off in the morning. If it reaches the lymph nodes in your groin, you'll die.
Yeah.
And he was lying there in bed, and he's thinking, I can't teach martial arts if I don't have a leg. And so he used a visualization, which I won't go into the specifics of it, but he used a visualization, and he did it for 8 hours straight. And by the morning, the poison had moved back down his leg and was leaving his body. And 3 days later, he walked out of the hospital.
Yep.
And he did it completely by himself with his mind. And of course, he was back down Chinatown again, and all of the merchants down there had been told he was dead. He was like a ghost, and I think they sent 6 martial artists with machetes to take him out, and he left his gun in its holster and walked and took them all out with his bare hands just to show them he was back. So fascinating. But as far as a healer, he was doing incredible things. We had there's in the Australian Football League that we have here, there is a guy called Jim Steins who holds the record for the most number of games played without missing a game. I think it's 240 odd or 270 odd number of years that went by where he didn't miss a game, and there's no padding or anything. It's a very brutal game, lots of injuries all the time.
Yeah.
And one time, and he was using Raoul as his healer, and one time he had torn the cartilage off his rib cage, and he was given 6 to 12 weeks to recover. Raoul taught him a visualization, a healing visualization, and then rubbed the ointment, we call it the magical Raoul goo. He rubbed the ointment on him twice a day, and he played the next week. He was fixed in 6 days.
Wow.
And he got, the next bit was that all of the medical staff of the football club that this guy played for told Jim Steins that he couldn't see Raoul anymore, and Raoul offered to teach them everything he was doing, and they declined, and they said he's not welcome at the club, and there you go, they shut it all down.
Yeah, well, this is the problem, isn't it? The system doesn't allow for that.
No.
And this is why I'm trying to, with the THI shows, I've mentioned a few times, but I mentioned it in a recent show about your own capabilities. In essence, martial arts tends to teach you discipline, where you have control over all aspects of your body, so it is helpful from that. I'm not fond of the violence, it's just not me. But, what it can do is tune you in to that vibratory frequency where you're more capable of magic as it's perceived. Miracles, we can all do it. It's just about getting to the right frequency to then And then, of course, the biggest thing is you have to believe in yourself. And
Yes.
this is part of the problem, is people think, no, only Jesus performs miracles, or, you know, or something else. No, all of the people can. You've performed miracles. All of us that listen to the show perform miracles. They'll all still be alive.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
and still have a sense of humour and retain some sanity. You know, that's a miracle in itself. But did the martial arts teach you mind over matter and a lot of that? Is that what
it
you
did?
gained?
And I asked him, you know, how can you heal these people? He's healed full Achilles tears in a weekend and crazy stuff. I said, how do you do it? And his response was ki extension, which is chi or prana or life force. He said, because of the martial arts training that I've done, my spirit is so strong that I am able to emit my life force into people when I'm doing the healing. So I can use ointments, and they had all of their various properties and things, but he said ultimately I can heal someone really quickly because I'm able to impart my life force into them when I do it.
Yeah.
And that's what he was able to do with fighting as well. So he became immune to pain. You know, we used to try to strangle him and all sorts of things. We'd be belting him and you could hit him as hard as you liked and nothing ever happened. He'd built such a strong
Field.
life force. Exactly, the field.
This
Exactly.
is the PSI field. You know,
right, yeah.
And basically, that's more of the real you than the vessel.
Right.
And that's basically what you're doing. You're tuning into the field. It's the same when you, like I said in Dreamtime, you open those doors when you're ready, and you open and access the field of information that is behind that door. Up until then, you didn't know that information existed because you weren't ready for it. When you are ready for it, whether it's information or abilities or whatever, those doors will open, and then you will be able to access the field. In essence, you want to call it the Akashic record, or you want whatever you want to call it. It's a field that's all around us, that contains all information that's ever gone out from everybody and every being and every entity. It's up to you whether you believe in yourself and make the evolutionary process forward on a soul level, even in this hideous construct, and develop your own skills. And then once you do that and gain confidence in it, because people automatically, oh, that was just a coincidence, or that's just a dream. No, that actually happens, and just please accept it. And then what can you be responsible with it, which is a problem in some areas. Can you be responsible with it, and what are you going to do for the betterment of yourself and everyone around you? And that's the key at the end of the day. If you give magic abilities to most of the population today, it's just going to turn into a bloodbath. Because
well, that was the benefit of martial art training, like you said, was the discipline. You had to have discipline and be responsible for yourself, or you never ended up training enough to get those skills anyway. So
no, the difference was he believed he could do it, and that's the key. That's the key. You know, I have done some of it, but did I believe it? Not initially. But eventually you see the evidence and you go, oh wow, so I have experienced some of it. I tend not to mention it too much, but there's one or two who are aware of it, because I don't really want it. I've never really wanted it outed, to be quite honest.
No, fair enough. Yeah.
I'm kind of out in it now, but it becomes the worst thing we can do is elevate anybody in particular where it looks like a saviour program, be it the martial arts Raoul. I imagine he was a very humble sort of person. You can't do that stuff if you're a completely extroverted. You have to have that element of humility to go with it. And
well, he was a paradox in that he would say, "Do you want to be as good as me?" He said, "Just do the work." He said, "The only difference between me and you is I've done the work and you haven't."
Yeah.
But at the same time, because he'd done the work, he was so arrogant because he knew he could beat anybody and everybody. And he would say it's not arrogance if it's true. And of course it was true. But what that did was it inspired all of us, because he never said, "I am the greatest."
No.
And, you guys can't do it. He said, I am the greatest. And he said, and you can all be the greatest too. But you just have to do the work.
Yeah. That's the ultimate teacher at the end of the day. It's not about keeping the students less than you. It's about getting all the students to be better than you. Because that's how humanity progresses, and this is where we fail with the education system. It's because the teachers know Jack, and so they teach Jack, and then
exactly.
I'm not. I do pick on teachers. I know I do. I never particularly liked teachers when I was in school, mainly because like yourself, I knew they were teaching crap. And I told quite a number of them, and obviously that doesn't go down too well. But no, you just know something, and you can't. And the frustration is you can't put your finger on it. How do I know this? And that's kind of where my journey started, and yours is the same. This is replicated on the many people I speak to, and the ones that have come on these shows. They don't know.
Yeah, I think the THI crew are full of them. Yeah.
Oh yes, there's quite a range of people. I don't think it's a coincidence, because we don't really promote the show too much, and people find the resonance. We can go out and publicise it here, there, and everywhere, but you then pick it up all and sundry. I think this group is different. And it's different for a reason. I think there's a lot of old souls in this group. I don't think, I know there's a lot of old souls in this group, and they found this group for a reason. Hopefully one day we can expand that out and get the populace in all countries to act in the way that THI does, where they're all, most of us have never met each other, very few of us have spoken to each other. And yet we all have a common bond and common concern and care for each other. Really it doesn't make sense. But on a bigger picture, yes it does, when you realise.
Yes it does, yeah. Only on the superficial level, yeah. It doesn't make sense, but...
people say, well, why are you talking to him? I was talking to a guy before back in the UK, I don't think his partner... why are you talking to him? Well, why not? Just because you haven't met. In a world full of texts with no connection, it's kind of satisfying to actually speak to people again, and speak to our own kind. The ones that get it. So it's good. From how are we for time, but okay. We'll probably cover a small part of this next topic you're going to discuss, and then we'll carry on after the music break. You went into coaching some sports in skill aspects and many other performances, and coaching the subconscious.
That was it was definitely from my training with Raoul and just who I was growing up. I was always able to read people's thoughts. I knew what people were afraid of, and I didn't. And Raoul told me that he could do that as well, but he shut it off because everybody was so miserable. He got sick and tired of picking up on people's misery, so he turned it off. For me, I wasn't able to do that. But in sporting context, I was able to use that, which is to a certain degree nefarious, because I was able to win sporting contests by understanding how to psychologically dismantle people. And what had happened was, I 24 years of age, my brother took me to and this is how I got in contact with Zuzanda. My brother took me to a beach volleyball centre, and I started playing beach volleyball, but I was training like a martial artist. I used to train the same way I had with Raoul, and this is when I'd lost contact with him, and I didn't really want to go and train with anybody else because nobody was teaching me authentic, mystical martial arts the way he was, so I didn't go anywhere else. And I started playing beach volleyball with my brother and training as a martial artist, and I had a young kid, actually, a 16-year-old, come and ask me if he could train with me. And so I said, yeah, just, you can copy what I'm doing. And before long, I had a group of 12 to 15 kids that were all coming and training with me on the sand, and they were asking me what it was, and I just as an off comment just said, oh, look, it's brutal training, mate, it's pretty brutal. And so they all called it brutal training, and it became this whole thing, and so on. And what happened was, two of these young boys, I don't even think they were old enough to drive a car, they were played in a tournament, and they came up against a professional team, giant men, 6'7" and sort of 6'4", and they drew in a time-based match with this professional team, and that team came and said, we want to know why those kids could draw with us, teach us, train us, coach us. And at that stage, I didn't know much about the technical aspects of the game. And I said, all right, I'll teach you the mental preparation and things, and the physical preparation, and largely for a number of years that's all I did. As players went and got technical coaching from other coaches, and then I would do the physical and the mental preparation for them, and I had quite a bit of success sort of doing that. But after a while there were changes to the cabal came in and set up its infrastructure and changed the way the game was played, and when they did that, the court size changed and the rules changed, and as a consequence, I ended up having to completely create different ways of the techniques being executed. And I went and spoke to Raoul about it, and basically, off intuition alone and understanding the martial art principles, I completely recalibrated the way that the game of beach volleyball was played, the modern game. And now it's 24 years later, so it's half my life I've been on a beach volleyball court. I'm 48 now, and I coach at the world tour level. I've got guys from different countries and a number of the top players in Australia that I've built into some of the best players in the world. And I've never told them this, and they may or may not listen to this show, but I've never planned anything. Yeah. I've never written anything down. I've never had a whiteboard or anything. I don't even know what I'm going to do often as I'm driving to practice. And I suddenly start to get, I begin to get intuitive flashes of where I should begin things. Sometimes they're taking the court and I don't even know. Yeah. I'm like, what am I supposed to be doing today? But what I've never ever done is I've never ever interfered in what I knew. I knew for some strange reason I was a conduit for knowledge in something that I'd never grown up doing. You know, I'd never played indoor volleyball. I'd never been taught anything by anybody. And for some reason, I just am a conduit for this sport. And so I'd never ever interfere by trying to plan anything. And now, you know, I've got some of the best players in the world flying over from Europe and so on to train. So, yeah, hopefully they won't listen to that and realise that I don't prepare anything for them in advance.
No, this is a couple of things. Sometimes I get to Monday or Tuesday, And I collect news items through the week for the shows. And there's sometimes I go, I've no idea what I'm going to put out for next Thursday. And then so suddenly I get a flash of inspiration. And then I tend to write a lot of it down. So I then can then look at it and go, is this a complete package? Can I add bits of other things in here that will fit into that? And that's kind of the way it goes with it. I mentioned recently, and perhaps you're a prime example of that. What you're doing is you're operating from the heart. You're not operating from the mind anymore.
Well, you've provided clarification,
That's where your intuition comes in. We can all master the mind, and I know some of those guys you were explaining before, and it can create trickery as such, which can be used for good as well, as it was proven. But the sporting realm, a lot of it, you will know, given you've mentioned volleyball and a few other things, martial arts, and golf, and the football. It's most of it is not the ability, it's the mental aspect. I used to play snooker, and
my dad's a snooker player.
I was fairly good at it, and before I walked to the table, I could see whether I was going to win or not. Because my field was stronger than most at that age, and you could see them in fear. And they were beaten because they were not mentally prepared to play the game.
And that's exactly it.
And you see a lot of these golfers, they struggle with what they call the yips, is it? Where they don't know when to use the putter, and it's a mental issue. And so the fact that you were able to teach that will have helped those people tremendously, because you can be able to run the fastest and do this and kick the ball further and all that, but if you're not mentally prepared, you're not going to be your best of your abilities, and that's a key aspect to everything, really.
Yes, it is. And as you say, that the ability to develop yourself mentally has to come from you. And Raoul never saw a sports psychologist or read a book on it or anything like that. He just trained so much harder than everybody else that he had that self-belief, as you mentioned before, that he conquered the mental aspects himself. So he was indestructible. He was and when I'm training people, I'm trying to get them to understand that they're ultimately responsible for generating the ability mentally to withstand any onslaught, any kind of onslaught. And a lot of them don't. But anything like you running the radio show or martial arts or high level sport, I mean, these things are not for everybody.
No.
They're for a very, very special few people that are meant to do it. And the idea to me is it's a total cabal program. The idea that everybody can do all these things is just sold to the masses as a distraction.
Yeah.
And, some people are meant to do these things, but everybody has greatness. Everybody has a greatness there that they are to experience, and they just don't follow it. They just get caught up in these ridiculous programs of, I should do this because it's in this magazine or on the TV or whatever.
One of the biggest problems, and this again it applies on the mental level, whether you have all the abilities, is fear. Again, that comes from the mind. Eventually, once you shut the mind out, which is what meditation's all about, it's shutting the mind down and going into the heart center, and that's the real you. That's where you get all your truth, whether you like that particular truth or you don't. It's still the real you, And this is part of the fear, And some of the members said, "I'd like to start my own show," and I think that's great. Other people think, that's competing. No, it's not. If that's what they choose to do, fine. If you get over the fear of ending, you are capable of doing anything. as long as you at first put your mind to it and then let your heart take over.
Yes, absolutely. And I used to be terrified to go to training at Rouse. I was, every single class I ever went to over all those 14 years, I was absolutely in abject terror every time I went, but I made myself go. Because he was the personification of all those values that I'd held so closely to myself, and I'd seen in these martial art movies, and I knew it was what I had to make myself do it. But as you've said a number of times, everything you want's on the other side of fear, right? So I just made myself do it, and it wasn't pretty. I mean, there were times I'm a gentle person, and I have a lot of craft, and I can put people away without hurting them, and I became very good at that. But I've suffered a lot of beatings, that's for sure. It hasn't been pretty a lot of the times, but the more it happened, the less it held sway over me. I wasn't afraid of it. The body adapts. As the PSI field becomes stronger, the pain's not as long, it's not as intense, that sort of thing. So, you adapt, but you just have to have courage. I mean, what's the worst that can happen? You're going to die, you're going to have a rest, and you're going to come back again and go again, right? And if you haven't learnt the lessons this time around, and if you haven't fulfilled your soul contract, then you're going to have to come back and do it anyway. So,
that's it. And as long as you don't have that fear, so you fail. But what is failure? Is it failure on a personal level, or are you worried about what other people think?
Exactly.
Failure can often lead to different choices, or it can make you more determined to go, I'm going to overcome that. I have overcome so many hurdles in my life, and I just turn around and go, F you. You're not bringing me down. You're not shutting me up anymore, because we're here to stay, and we're going to expose this criminality and drive the world into a better place. And they can issue all the threats they like. Like you said, the worst thing you do is take it out. So what? I'll come back worse.
That's right. That's exactly right. And people have swallowed the program of, even though people know on an intellectual level they may believe in reincarnation or whatever, until you accept it as a truth, they still hold sway over you. The fear of pain and death and whatever holds sway over you. And you can go out there and you can conquer that yourself. You never have to go into a martial art dojo. You don't have to go and fight people or hurt yourself or anything, but you can take control of the fear. And it's not that the fear is not there, you just act in spite of it. I was never not afraid to go and train. I was always afraid, but I just went anyway. And I just hope that Rao didn't pick me out to demonstrate on too often.
Yeah. That's good stuff. Right, we're going to go into your second music piece. And unfortunately, I couldn't get hold of your altered third piece today.
Okay.
So we've got two from this particular band. And which one's first?
Well, I'll apologise to Frankenbach. They're my favourite Australian band. I posted on their page I was going to have a track from there. So for all of you that like heavy metal, there's a Melbourne metal band, Frankenbach, and I think their name came from an American listener who was trying to refer to fair dinkum. What's that thing you say in Australia? Frankenbach? So I think that maybe the name for the band came from that. But they're my favourite band, and they've been going for years and years. They've never sold out, and as a consequence, they're not on top of the heap, but they produce some of the best metal music I've ever heard. So anyway, we'll go for Two Steps from Hell then. Right,
and this is Protectors of the Earth. We'll be back shortly. And welcome back to the second hour of Hayden Ellis. That was rather interesting, all about martial arts, coaching and dream world and injuries and overcoming fear. It was a packed first hour. We're going to have a lot more for you in this second hour. And where are we next? Miracles have occurred whilst coaching, and that will complete that particular set. Golf.
Yes. It was, again, it's all intuitive, I guess, and I think one of the things I learned reasonably early on was not to dismiss something as coincidence, but to accept if a book had crossed my path or somebody was pointing me in a certain direction, I was paying a little bit more attention than perhaps a synthetic would anyway. And I was directed to a few books, and I was working when I was at university at a cinema, and I'd just been reading The Inner Game of Tennis by Timothy Galway, and another book had come across my path, Quantum Golf, and these were basically making reference to the subconscious and the spiritual self and how it was in complete knowledge and sort of complete knowing. And what I used to do at the cinema was each night I would screw up an A4 sized sort of like a small movie poster. It was just an advertisement for a movie. I'd screw it up into a ball and I'd go and stand while the last movies of the night were on. I'd go and stand in the corner and I'd turn my back and close my eyes, and I'd throw the piece of paper behind myself, attempting to put it into a rubbish bin. And I was incorporating these principles from these books that I'd been reading. And I went for 3 months and I didn't miss. And I decided one night that, and it was probably, would have been 8 metres to 10 metres away. So a significant throw. I wasn't just sort of flipping it out of my pocket. Yeah. I decided one night that this was going to be the last throw that I was doing, and I got really nervous. It was only between me and myself, but I was really nervous, and no one knew that I did it or anything like that. And I stood there and I went through the various processes that I'd learnt in the book and modified myself and with a bit of the martial arts stuff, and I threw this piece of paper and I knew that I'd thrown it off the planet. It was not going anywhere near the rubbish bin. and so I turned around and I'd thrown it up on top of the large movie poster frames, and it bounced across the frames and went in the bin. And I realised at that moment that although I knew what the outcome was, I couldn't necessarily determine the process that was going to occur, but I still had to have absolute intention on what it was that I was trying to do. I was trying to do all of these things that I'd read about as best as I could, and I produced a throw, in essence, that was complete rubbish, but the outcome was still assured because I never deterred my intention from it. And that then shaped a lot of the way I went about coaching and training myself and so on. And I used to go out with a friend of mine. My Saturday nights were riveting stuff. I used to go and drink coffee and talk about philosophy. So that was my Saturday nights. But we used to. I'd come across a book on transcendental meditation, and of course, I'm pretty sure it's not what it's all cracked up to be now. I think it might be a program, but without going too much into that, you can't learn transcendental meditation without paying large sums of money and going to the classes. But there was a book on the principles of it, and the principle was that instead of using meditation to put a cage on your mind to stop it moving around, instead you take the cage off the monkey and it will come to rest of its own accord. So the natural state for your mind was to be at rest. And I was pondering that for some time, and I went home, and what I'd been sort of dealing with was I want to experience happiness, and I want to experience bliss, and I want to experience enlightenment, whatever these terms mean. I don't think I was too sure back then anyway. But I lay down to meditate, and it was like a koan, which is an unanswerable question in Japanese Zen philosophy. The question going round and round in your mind, you can't find an answer. And I was asking myself, well, if my natural state is already there, if the outcome is already assured, and according to quantum physics, there's no real separation in time and space from me and what it is that I seek, if my natural state is to be at rest, then surely my natural state is to be experiencing bliss and to be experiencing enlightenment and so on. And what happened is I suddenly just, I don't know if it was me or another part of me, just said out loud, oh my God, I'm already there. And I just suddenly realized that everything that I'd been seeking, I already was. And what happened, very difficult to explain, but the way that I've described it is every single cell in my body opened like a flower blooming.
Yeah.
And I left my body, and I still had chatter going on. There was lots of chatter. You know, oh, this is going to be great. How's this experience? I can't wait to tell my friend about this, and so on. But that chatter was about 10 miles away from me. I could hear it, but it was like a little tiny voice that was miles and miles away from where I was. And so I experienced this complete euphoria and at the time I remember thinking, if this is death, then kill me now. I can't, there's nothing better that I could experience than what I'm experiencing right now. And it felt through like 3 or 4 minutes, I eventually came out of this rapture, and it had been 40 minutes, and I've never been able to recapture the experience again, but definitely some kind of shift occurred in me when I had that experience. Sorry?
It's the bliss aspect of it, isn't it?
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So I had that experience, and it was all sort of culminating in the experience became a realization. I was having this realization, and what I started to do was take the athletes that I coached and teach them how to do the throwing of an object into a bin or some other object when they had their eyes closed, and they often didn't even know where the object was. And it was to teach them that their subconscious or their higher self actually knows everything in advance, and that one of the things about the Timothy Galway's book, The Inner Game of Tennis, was that the degree to which you miss, or the lack of accuracy in any aspect, is directly proportional to the conscious interference. And so I started to do this, what we call ball in a bin, with the athletes, to create these experiences of them connecting with their higher selves. And what I was doing, without telling them that, was I was getting them to connect to their higher selves, so that when they went and played their sport, they had a connection, as you would say, to the heart, rather than having it as an intellectual exercise. And so they were playing or competing from the heart. And I guess the example that I was going to give, the golf example, is I was coaching a golfer in mental, the mental side of it, and he flew me to Malaysia to prepare him for, he was going to go to China to compete in a major event over there, a huge money event over there, and he hadn't been playing well, and he flew me to Malaysia to prepare him for the China event. And in Malaysia there was a British Open qualifying event that he was going in, and to him there was, 3 people out of 70, 80, 100 guys get to qualify for the British Open from the Asian Tour. And for him it was like, come and help me prepare, I'll play the tournament and you can have a look. And I just got over there and said, well, do you want to go to the British Open? I'm not going to fly all the way to Malaysia just to prepare you for China. Why don't we prepare you to go to the British Open? So we did all of our various preparations, and it got down to I don't know how well you know golf, but it got down to the last few holes of the last round, and he was a few shots behind, and he just suddenly went on a birdie blitz and started scoring really well, and he got to the last hole, which was a par 5, and which means that on average you take 5 shots, and I said to him, you're going to need to birdie the hole, which would be 4 shots. Yeah, well, he said to me, I need to eagle it. I need to eagle it to go. And he proceeded to hit his driver 300 down the middle. He then took his fairway wood out and hit it towards the green, and about 250 metres, incredible shot. But what happened was it was going to land on the green. It ended up going, I don't know if you know, if the listeners know about a bunker, but the sand bunkers, and they have a tongue of grass. And the ball went into the tongue of grass, and it was buried in the tongue of grass in the side of the bunker.
Wow.
Right next to the green.
On the bank.
And so, yes, on the bank, exactly right. So he was kind of standing sideways and so on. So what he did was the process he went through is he did a meditation breath, and he selected the club purely on intuition that he was going to use. And the club that he pulled out, he said to me later, I never use that club for that shot. I never use it. So he pulled the club out. He then did another breath and a visualization process. And just as he was doing that, a reporter came up to me from Ireland and said, you know, who do you think is going to qualify? And I said, you watch this. I don't even know why I said it. I said, but you watch this. Richard Moore, he'll qualify, this guy. So he stands, and he was incredible. He gets and stands there, and he hits the ball, digs it out of the grass, and it comes out hot. So it's coming out at 100 miles an hour. It is going to go across the green into the bushes on the other side and get lost, and it hits the pin and goes in. And he has an eagle, and he goes to the British Open.
Cool.
And he was doing these sorts of things all the time. It was incredible, absolutely incredible.
You'll know, having played sport, and this applies to other fields, but particularly in sport. Suddenly, I'll use the example snooker again. Although I was rather good at football until I broke my knee.
Nasty.
I was on the brink of turning professional as a snooker, and I fell off a ladder, and I was on trials for one of the top youth teams in England, and I broke my knee. So it was sport kind of passed me by. Maybe it was meant to be, or maybe there was interference. Who knows? I've had enough of that. But there are times when I was playing snooker where you get down on the shot and you know it's going in before you even hit it. And golf is very much the same. It's a lot of it is on the mental level. If you're not in that zone, your shots are flying sideways and all kinds. And you get into that. There's a specific zone where you feel, I'm not going to miss. So.
Yes, and exactly on that point of the zone is through the realizations that I'd had. The whole world is spending their time trying to get somewhere. They're trying to get into the ideal frame of mind or whatever. And I just realised it's your natural state. So your natural state is to be in the zone, and if you're not in the zone, it's because you're interfering. You're
applying fear to it.
Exactly.
External force.
You're getting in your own way. Exactly right. So that process mentally, and I saw it with Raoul, is he conquered fear, and he used to keep that quote from the back of the book of Dune. I must not fear. Fear is the mind killer. There's a quote on the back of the book of Dune, the movie Dune, or the novel Dune, and he conquered fear, and he was able to act in spite of it, and that's why he always did the right thing. He would do miracles on the mat when he was fighting. He would do miracles in healing because he was just always in the correct state all the time. Yeah. And it took me a long time to realise. He'd done it through hard training, and I'd done it, I guess, more through trying to understand myself and studying mysticism and philosophy and meditation and anything that I could. I was just trying to learn the truth about who I was and where I was and why I was here and all that stuff.
But that's, as I said, that's the key. Is when they say you're losing your mind, and I think, oh, good. As long as you've developed enough of the heart center, losing your mind's a good thing, because the mind plays tricks. The mind has the chatter that you don't know where it comes from, and it's influencing you on a subconscious level so much. And that's why meditation, you start off and you might need music, and you might last 5 minutes and fall asleep, and then realise you might go half an hour and you're okay, and you think you've only been 5 minutes, and then it develops, and then suddenly you realise you can meditate without the music and without shutting your eyes. And people, I can hear people thinking, what's he saying now? You can, it's all about like golf and like snooker and sports, muscle or memory training. So whatever subject it is, if you hold that frequency or hold that memory, then you can operate it in different fields. So you don't have to go quiet to meditate. Eventually you can reach a stage where you can meditate with all carnage going on around you, because you've remembered that bliss zone. So you can then develop yourself where you can shut all the chatter out, and you just go snap and straight into that zone. And things are it depends on each individual what unfolds when you get in that zone, whether you do things, learn things, see things, or whatever, or you go through portals, or you go through into other universes. There's no limitation, and that's the problem with the mind, is it imposes fear and limitation, and that's when people then break down themselves and think, it's only little me, I can't do nothing and all this. Well, yes you can make yourself sick. So if you can make yourself sick, you can also make yourself heal,
Yes, and I think that to a certain degree is a key to the end of the cabal, is that a lot of what is keeping them going is the fact that people are afraid. And it's like we've won, and there's only two possible outcomes: is we are going to have this new earth, or it's all going to be destroyed. They are the only possibilities. There is no third possibility of the cabal retaining control. It's not a possibility. No. And therefore, because we've already won, people are still keeping half an eye on, but maybe we haven't. And it's because they're afraid. And so for me, the game's over. Yeah. The game's up. The only questions remain are, how long is it going to take for all of it to come out? Am I going to still be alive? All of this sort of stuff. But that's the superficial self that's asking those questions. The soul, the spiritual self, is going to be returning, and I'm going to work as hard as I can to make sure that if it hasn't occurred by the time I leave here, that when I come back, it has occurred. Or I'm just going to continue working on it anyway. So it's relentless. I mean,
it's about. Sorry,
go on.
It's a lot of people struggle because it's going on and on, because they don't understand how long it's been going on for one reason, or how deeply ensconced it is.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is the main problem. People think that Trump's the problem, or Obama's the problem, or Tony Blair, or whoever the Australian Prime Minister is a problem, when you don't realise they're mere specks in the control system, and...
well, none of them were around 16,500 years ago, were they?
Maybe one or two.
Well, not Trump, anyway.
No. Heaven forbid. Heaven forbid they had to watch game show hosts become president.
16,500 years of Trump on television. Yeah.
How we've evolved to having game show hosts as a president. Maybe not. But until we put up something that's valid with a proper platform, we're always going to be given their choices. The key is recognising they're not our choices, and so ultimately we have to create our own choice. And you don't take the blue pill and you don't take the red pill. You just tell them to stick their pills where the sun don't shine. There's the same in politics and the same in all walks of life. It's always two choices. Well, no, I'm going to exercise. You've given me those two choices. I'm going to exercise my own choice and pick none of them. And this is the key to going forward. If 99% of the people decided, I'm not voting, it's game over. And people think, well, that's too simple. Because you've allowed your mind to think that everything is complex, when in reality, life, nature, the universe, the cosmos is all simple. So
it's all very simple. I mean, we have compulsory voting here, unfortunately, but it doesn't mean you actually have to cast a vote. Of course, you can go in there and write tiddlywinks on the sheet, but we have a whole infrastructure that likes to fine people for not going and voting and all of the various things. So
but we allow that. If everyone decided, you know what, I'm still not voting, what are they going to do? Arrest the whole population? No, that's right. But that requires everybody to be awake and that's some of the problem anyway.
that's for sure.
All right, where are we next? Your history as a truth seeker. That should be some interesting stuff for that.
Yeah, but for me it started quite a long time ago. It was when, I was looking from the time I can remember, because of the situations with the dreams and the seed of life patterns and things I was seeing. I was always trying to find out what was going on. Largely though, I had to swallow the narrative that was given to me at school, except about my own personal experiences, the stuff that I didn't know about. But then in 1993, I was living in Japan, and I had a friend there who gave me Graham Hancock's Fingerprints of the Gods.
Yeah.
And he had read it and was talking to me about the whole Upawat thing and sending the little robot through the passages and finding copper handles and all these sorts of things. And so it was very clear that what we were being told the pyramids were and all of that was nonsense. And that was the first time I'd come across anything that was questioning the prevailing wisdom at the time. And I thought all of these things were completely disparate. So I thought that high performance and martial art, mysticism and these incredible things that they could do, and archaeology and all of the interests that I had in finding out about space and all of this stuff, I thought they were all completely separate subjects. Only to now know that they're all part of one whole that is being compartmentalised and fragmented so that we can't understand what's going on. But it's all the same.
Yeah.
So you start finding out the truth about one aspect, and it unlocks the doors to the other aspects. You start realising that it's all a facade, Yeah, people say that... Sorry, go on.
Yeah, just briefly. We had this issue back in CV. We had some people saying, can we have less about the ETs? We want to know about what's on Earth. And the answer was, you're never going to learn anything if you discount them, because you don't realise how much the control system that they have put forward here. It's all part of the package. But some people
exactly right
want to take bits out of it.
You might be able to tell me what this was, actually. I a few years ago now, 4 or 5 years ago, and I have a friend of mine that was with me at the time, so I actually have a witness to this, thank goodness, because otherwise probably wouldn't bring it up. But I was following Stephen Greer at the time before, finding out a bit more about him, but he had an app that I had on my phone which supposedly sent some signal or something, noise, and I had that going, and we were sitting outside in the country in Victoria at night, and a starlit night, and we were looking at the supposed satellites going around everywhere, and one of them went across the top of us, and we got high beamed. We got flashed, and it was as bright as having the headlights turned on you. So, and I can't say what it was, but it was I was saying we want to connect with something up there. Is anything there? And then the next thing that happened was we got high beamed. We got flashed by one of these supposed pod-sized satellites, and since then I've seen them in formation flying and changing directions and stopping over the house and all sorts of weird stuff like that. So, yeah.
Yeah, I've had a similar experience. I've had the number, and I forget. Sometimes I forget to tell. I've had a strange experience during the day, and it happens that frequency that I forget to tell Chloe when I get home. And I think, it's just another day, But then you realise when you look back at the recordings of it, because I have documented a lot of stuff, and you think, oh my God. But this was right on. But I'll give you the time scale. It was right at the time that universal voice was collapsing, and we were about to launch cosmic voice. It was that week, and my personal life was a complete and utter mess, and I was arguing with the ex, and it was on the brink of ending, and there was a sonic boom, and I heard the voice go outside, and I was busy with a number of things, and then it happened again 2 hours later, and go outside. So I did. The ex-wife, it was around 11:15. She used to make a cup of coffee before she went to bed, and she brought it out and said, "Are you okay?" So I said, "Yeah, I'm fine." And as she stood next to me, this craft, circular disc in shape, suddenly put the beam on the both of us. Well, she kind of wet her pants.
Wow.
And the thing disappeared into thin air. And it really freaked her out. But yeah, that was just one of a number. It just eventually it becomes so regular that you just think it's just an everyday thing and forget there's a lot of other people that don't experience one of these events, never mind probably near 100, it's glitches in the matrix and portals opening and all kinds of stuff, it's
right.
It's hard to, it's hard to accept, because the vast majority of people just won't believe it. And this is why we do these shows where you can come and talk about it and know people are not going to ridicule it, because deep down, each and every one that listens to this show have all had a very, very strange experience, but they're all too frightened to say it.
Yeah.
Basically, these shows, the likes of you today, you are a way shower for others to then gain the courage and come and speak their stories, because you've all got them. I know you have in THI. I know a lot of you have come forward with it, but don't hold on to it. It's not helping you. So it's
yes, well, thank you.
It's it's interesting stuff, and it's meant to be shared. It's not meant to be a burden upon you, and so come and share it. That's the way forward. So we'll carry on with so that those type of experiences led you into seeking the truth, and you went through Stephen Greer, and then where did that kind of lead you on from there?
I apologise for backtracking briefly,
that's okay.
But what you've just said reminded me of something I meant to. This is the problem with not taking notes. I meant to relay. It was just regarding what you said about hearing a voice reminded me. So Master Rao's wife, I won't give her name. She's still alive. She's a Tai Chi and Qigong master herself. And she's of British background, and she meditates every morning down by a pond, and she's very, very intensely spiritual and quite a mystical person. Talks to birds and does all sorts of crazy things, which I don't quite understand. But she has heard voices, has had voices speak to her on a couple of occasions. But she had an interaction once with Rao. I went to get healed by him, and there's a photo on his wall in his clinic of 3 bent spoons, and the story goes that his wife spent a week fasting in meditation, and she basically performed Uragala on the kitchen table with a spoon in front of Rao. Right. And Rao's response to it happening was, do it again. So she went and got another spoon out of the drawer and put it on the table and bent it with her mind. And he said, do it again. So she went and got another spoon, put it on the table and bent it. And then he said, stay there. And he went and got his camera and came and took a photo, had it blown up and put it in a frame to remind him that he doesn't know everything.
Yeah. That's good.
Yeah.
That's a good reminder. There's people kind of think because I can cover many subjects that I know everything, but they tend to forget that I'm learning each day as well. Even the vast knowledge that I've got on various subjects, we're learning stuff every day, and that's the key to it. Is if you think you know it all, then you really don't know anything.
And this is the thing. I was going to bring this up regarding you, Thomas, and the show, because there's always this aspect of use your own discernment and so on. Well, it's very from my perspective, I like to apply reason and logic as best I can within a mystical context, of course. But when it comes to finding out which of the alternative media hosts and so forth are stooges, it's very, very simple. You're the only one, at least that I listen to. There might be more. I don't listen to Randy Morgan, I think it is, who you've talked about. I don't listen to a lot of others now, but you say that you don't know. People ask you questions and you say you don't know. Whereas these guys, all of the rest of them have a dialogue where they always have an answer. They have an answer to everything. They have an opinion on everything, whereas you flat out, when you either don't know or you have to go away and look into it or something like that, you just say it. So there's no... You can tell that it's true and it's honourable and it has integrity, because what you are always saying is exactly what the case is, without trying to cover up and, I'm the radio host, I should know all this stuff and I'll have to come up with something, and protecting, as you say, your YouTube hits and all of this nonsense. And that's why I knew very early on. I think I started listening about 6 months in. I got a link from the Starship Earth website, and I just, because in the question time section you were answering everybody's questions, including some that I sent in, you were answering, and then you're just saying that you didn't know when you didn't know. And I went, well, this guy's legit then, isn't he? So that was it for me. I knew.
Yeah, it's okay to not know stuff. People develop the comparative mindset where they get, this guy knows it all, or I can't compete with this guy. He knows too much. Well, you're not there to compete. You're there to learn, and I learn off everybody. that's how I've gained the knowledge. I haven't dismissed anybody. There's some ones that recently that I felt needed to be exposed because they've got a hidden agenda. If someone wants to go on a YouTube and spout BS, that doesn't really affect me and doesn't affect anybody else. They're just saying BS. But if they're going to go on and set up blogs and talk shows where it has a hidden agenda, then I'm going to speak out, because that I can't stand by. And we've fallen for hopium far too many times. 2 weeks, and it's coming from this, and this is happening, and the RV's happening, and the SARA's happening, and mass arrests, and it goes on and on and on and on. And
it keeps them going, because if we swallow that program that they're putting out there, we are keeping them going by buying into the program. And that's when we were talking before the show started, that's one of the things that irritates me to some degree, is on the MeWe and the Facebook page and so forth. People are posting all of this stuff, which to me has been dealt with on the shows. And even if I looked into it, I don't think that I'd necessarily post it, because it's like an affront. If you've put all the time into these shows, and I trust what you're saying, and if I go and post things contradictory to what you're saying, I'm saying I don't trust you. Yeah. But I do trust you, and I do trust what you say. So if I have a problem, well, I just have to come and ask you, won't I?
Yeah.
Rather than just filling the page with all of this stuff that just it's already been dealt with. All you have to do is go and listen to the show. And for me, I listen to the shows all multiple times. I don't know why I need to do that, but I just make sure I have my head around every single aspect of everything. But that's all people really need to do, in my opinion. And it's even going back and listening to past shows. The setup's all there. You can find out why you're saying what you're saying now if you just go spend some time and go back and listen to the other shows.
Yeah, it's I've kind of done it in a. If I was asked how disclosure should be rolled out, it has to be done in stages where it gives people a chance to process, and also gives people of all learning levels an opportunity to get a basic understanding where they can then go forward with the show. Yeah. And we've done the biggest shows that are not part of the Thursday, where it's highlighted certain subjects, whether it's to do with ETs, or whether it's to do with the Illuminati, or whether it's to do with what we call the Levershoft material and Humanity Unplugged, and even Thursday was like a show within a show, when I'm getting to look at certain things as to ask why everything seems to go to hell, and it doesn't matter which species it is, in a handbasket, come up with, their own opinions on it. It wasn't stated as a fact. I asked questions, and that's what the key is, to getting people to understand. I'm not asking them to regurgitate everything I say. Go and research what I've pointed out. There's obviously a lot of aspects that you can't prove one way or the other, which is why I kind of leave some of the personal stuff of my own out, because it's like what you experienced as a child. That's your truth. It's not mine. But eventually, we're now meeting up and all having the courage to talk about it. We realise there's many more of us having meeting these same entities, and so the show's kind of been a storybook where it's led into different subjects and gone down various rabbit holes and got people to at least have a chance, like the Factions show. That was, it's 2015, that show. It explains the Illuminati has broken up into these 5 factions, and now suddenly people are catching on the 5 factions, and give them a chance to be ahead of the game of who's who. So when someone's saying, well, we want to do this, then you realise, well, that can only be this faction or that faction, and then eventually you learn, now I know which faction it is. And so
Yeah.
that's in my opinion, that's the best way to do it. You know, people who don't know this stuff have no chance whatsoever going forward. They're not going to be able to cope with it. And this is why I said a couple of years ago, what was it, November, December of 16, we can't help them no more. We just can't. You know, we've given a lot of our time trying to educate these people and getting them to accept that there's something radically wrong with this world. And many of us, in essence, have neglected ourselves. And it's time that I thought that was the right time where we really focus on ourselves, do our shadow side and do our inner work and learn to trust ourselves and our intuition and get in touch with your heart center. And we've covered a lot of the psychological aspects on the show because that's just as important. You can have the abilities as a golfer or as a volleyball player, but if you're not mentally prepared, you're going to struggle. So you can have all this knowledge that Clinton's this and Bush is that and Obama's this and all that, but if you're not mentally prepared for when the full truth comes out, you're going to, it's all wasted. And so you have to get yourself in tune and in calm and balanced state, which comes into the martial arts training. Like you said before, everything all comes back and is interlinked somehow. In a way,
yeah.
When you're doing the meditation, you're going into the same similar zones as the martial arts people. It's that.
Yes.
In a tune, in a frequency.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Absolutely, and that's what this show has done, certainly for me, and I think there'd be others that would agree, is when you start learning this information, the problem that you have is there something wrong with me for knowing this? Is there something wrong with me for wanting to know more about this? Because nobody else seems to care. And what this show has provided is a platform which says it's okay to know this stuff, because there's a lot of us that know this stuff, and in fact there are groups of people that are going to change it all. And so for me, I now don't get too caught up in the nitty-gritty aspects, because it's all symptomatic of the larger problem. And the larger problem is being dealt with, but it's going to be up to us as to how long the death throes of the beast keep going, the death rattle or whatever, as Miss Mana called it, keep going. It's going to be up to us how severe all of that is. And for me, the only thing I can do is prepare myself mentally and physically the best that I can. And so I don't wallow in self-pity or lack of, self-doubt or any of that sort of stuff, because it's not going to help you. It's not going to help what's happening.
No. You
might as well spend your time, go for a run, make yourself a juice, read an inspiring book, write an inspiring book, do something productive. This new world that we're going into is not a new world that's going to support people with a victim mentality. So you're going to have to, as you say, the whole idea of sovereignty is that it comes with responsibility, and that responsibility also is for yourself and your mindset and how you see the world and what you see it becoming. And I'd rather spend all day, every day working towards making it better and get killed in the process than worrying about being killed and sitting there waiting for it to happen and go for death by 1,000 cuts. It's just that the mental torment, which we've all been through, and don't get me wrong, I went through that for 5 or 6 years, when pretty much from 2010, I think, onwards, things got pretty severe, and then we had all of the OPPT stuff come out and everything, and the big disclosure run there and so on, and then, going sort of back into the history of the Truth Seek, I got introduced to Zuzanda, and that was a whole another kettle of fish, and I can say for THLI listeners, I've been in a very unique and fortunate position to be getting intel from Thomas and also getting exactly the same or modifications on a theme from somebody else who's definitely on the inside and working on the inside to make these changes happen. I was getting that information from both sources, and the sources were completely unrelated. And one of the things that I went and did was, introduce them, and now they know each other, and obviously you guys will be working together at some point, I'm sure. But the point was that I didn't just have this information coming from one source. I was getting it from two unrelated sources. One of the people I knew personally, and then over time, I began to trust what you were saying, as for reasons that I've said before. And so I can say from personal experience that much of the majority of the intel that's coming out on the show is what's happening. It's not made up, and I can appreciate that people are going and needing to seek validation and look at endless other sources of information, but I don't have to now, because I can just listen to the show each week, and it gives me a good outline of what's happening, and then I can cross-correlate with somebody else, and I just, I try to reassure people that I know who listen to the show and are quite involved in everything that's going on. I can reassure you that this is not stuff that's being made up. That it's all true. There may be instances where specific details might be off, and that's fine. And Hillary didn't get in, and big deal. So the Rothschild's faction, the Zionist faction guy, got in instead. But they're just details, aren't they? Yeah. Whereas the overall context of what's happening and what has happened in the past and so on, that's, it's all true. It's fair dinkum, or it's Frankenbach, as they say.
Yeah, good stuff. So your next topic you'd like to discuss on is golf, which you may have covered, but you may have more to say.
No, I pretty much covered that. Yeah.
Mum's death, and then we'll get into Rosicrucianism and why you joined, or why you wanted to join.
Yeah, well, golf's a little bit related. My mum was diagnosed with ovarian cancer when I was on the 10th hole at the golf course that I play at, so that was the end of that. I had wanted to become a good golfer and hopefully one day turn professional. I saw that as a means to generate wealth and to then be able to put that wealth back into society and into projects I had my eye on doing. I just wanted to help people, and also hopefully be free of the slavery system. So for me, I viewed it as a way out to find freedom and be able to make decisions for myself. Anyway, Mum was diagnosed with ovarian cancer, and I put the clubs away then. And it didn't take me very long with some of the other knowledge that I had to realise that she was being murdered. So she was murdered by the cabal infrastructure and was a victim of the mass genocide of the modern day medical system. Yeah. And I did a lot of looking into a lot of things. We were able to keep her alive. She was at a very advanced stage, but she did live for another 5. She had a regression and lived another 5-6 years, I think. Died in 2007, so 10 years ago now. But yeah, that was definitely an awakening, turned me off the path of playing golf, and there was all sorts of financial problems that came with that for my dad, and I was being asked to coach, and that's when I began taking the coaching on that I was being asked to do, was to help financially help out with everything that was going on. And after she died, I was asking questions. I was never asking why or anything. I was asking, well, where's she gone? I want to know where she's gone.
Yeah.
And can I contact her?
Yeah.
And I was led through synchronicity to Rosicrucianism. They asked me why I wanted to join, and my response to that was to pretty much find out where she'd gone, and secondly was to know why I had the special abilities that I had, which aren't special, they're just for some reason. I just have them. I'm able, being able to read people's thoughts and all that stuff. And so I joined, and being the ever paranoid, distrustful person that I am, I studied the lessons of Rosicrucianism, but also studied the organisation from the outside. So I was doing both. I never swallowed the idea that the organisation may not have an agenda, and I've had that pretty much verified. Mm. Now, even speaking to local Freemasons at the market malls and things like that, they have different expos on community functions and things like that, and the Freemasons will go and set up a stand there, and I went and spoke to them, and they said that when a Freemason reaches the 33rd degree, becomes a Master Mason, they have a choice between joining either the Templars or the Rosicrucians. They're the two paths that they choose. So the fact that supposedly I was a Rosicrucian at that point meant that I think the term that they used was, "Oh, you're already in," was the term that was used. Right. So, and I think the reason that I did join is there's simply so many historical figures that are Einstein and Da Vinci and all these guys were part of these mystical fraternities, and Rosicrucianism in many cases specifically. And, I had, like everybody, had been led to believe that these people were genuine. Many of them are, but many of them aren't. And so that verified. For me, it gave me validation in going in, and I've studied now right through to the last, from my understanding, the last temple degree that they have. So I'm considered to be at the very, very pointy end of, at least, of the teachings that they provide in writing through the monographs that they send you. And I have studied the stuff that they send out, and they have a lot of information on healing and some very, very interesting historical documents. They go through religions and all sorts of things. So, but there is, I guess, and I don't want to say that it's necessarily nefarious, but there seems to be more and more an agenda that's making itself apparent as I've gone further through the studies. But they do house a number of historical documents, thousands and thousands and thousands of historical documents that are not open to the public to view, much like the Vatican archives. Yeah. And I have been told recently from a reliable source that a number of the secret societies have changed sides. I can't tell you if Rosicrucianism is one of them that has changed sides. I don't know what side they're on still, but a number of them have, and I will continue the studies that I'm doing. I'll see it right through. I just won't be doing some of the documents that they ask you to sign. So I won't be doing, there's oaths and pledges and things like that come up, and I just don't do those.
No.
Yeah.
That's fair enough. Yeah. Well, that's you exercising your choice, and that's the key on the bigger aspects. When people say, "I didn't consent to this," well, actually you did, because some of it you are totally ignorant of because you haven't been educated on it, and others it was just a convenience tool. Oh yeah, I'll sign that. I can't be bothered reading it. And that's where you give your consent. It's like the Paris Treaty. You had people ignoring the bribed ones that were made to sign it. Yeah. These people, put in documents and you think, oh, it's for one purpose, when clearly it's for another. That's, in very small font on page 303 of a 10,000 page document, because they know nobody's going to read it. So I can't be bothered with that. Let's just sign it. And it's the same with a mortgage. You signed a mortgage, said you're going to repay it when it's already paid. And then when you get the house, it tells you are a tenant. And we sign these documents, and the Paris Climate Agreement, buried in it, it says that every country had to sign it and hand over all their in-ground resources to the UN.
And there's your new Rothschild financial system.
Yeah, there's your consent. Obviously it's not our consent, but these people are, unfortunately, where it does come back to our consent is we still have people voting these people in, when we really need to vote people in who think for and by the people only. They haven't got 6 lobbyists attached, which is how every senator in America has a minimum of 6 lobbyists attached to him or her. No, we don't want lobbyists. Go away, because either it's good for the people or it's not. And if it's not, then we scrap it.
Yeah.
Same
That's exactly right.
Same as technology. And there's always, I don't want to go too deep, as I know there's certain things in those mystical schools that you can't reveal. There's always...
Ask away.
Well, there's always elements of it. People hear that term and go, ooh, that's not good, and you'll hear, this is the Grandmaster of blah blah, who I'm referring to. That doesn't sound right. But one of the answers I give, everybody knows my opinion of titles and how bloodlines and families are not more important than anybody else. They're just not. I don't care who you are, whether you're the President of the United States or anybody else. You treat people the same. You don't elevate anyone above you. That's part of the problem we're facing.
That's why I study it is exactly for that reason. Is I don't study it because I have a loyalty to the organisation. I don't have any loyalty to the organisation. My loyalty is to truth. And you have information. Now, clearly, whether you're operating in service to self or operating in service to others, clearly you have information that is valuable, because why would the enemy study this information if it was not of value? So for me, I'm going to go and study it, and at some point I will decide whether or not it's worth continuing studying it if I think it's not of value or it's not, it's no good. But the lessons that are provided on the whole I have found extremely valuable. But I could see that you could get caught in an agenda where you start to muddy the waters and you start to believe that it's not the information, but it's the titles and the badges and the organisation that are of worth. Yeah. And for me, you could call it tiddlywinks. I don't care. It doesn't matter. It's the information. And you were saying with the Rosicrucians that were assisting with the Sangreal document. Yeah. Clearly there's good in there.
Yeah.
And I'm going to make my own decision in regards to it, and I'm not going to discount the teachings in this. This is what I don't like about it is, how can you just say that these mystical fraternities are of no value unless you've studied the information? You're simply saying they may have all been infiltrated, and I think that in the 60s when they all opened their doors and started sharing the information, I think that was because the Illuminati had gained control of them. And so they were able to then structure the agenda the way they wanted to it, and all of the supposed intelligent spiritual people that that asked a lot of questions could get funneled in through these various groups. That's my personal opinion, but it doesn't discount the information. And you can read these documents, and they stand, to a large degree, they stand alone, and you can ignore a lot of the prefacing and so on that comes from the organisation. Just study the documents themselves. There's experiments in there that you do, and the experiments do show you that you are able to do quite amazing things. Some of them I can't do. I obviously don't have the ability to do some of the stuff yet, but there's a lot of the things there that I'm sure people would be able to do. And it doesn't have to be Rosicrucianism, but there are all sorts of groups. But if there was any, I've never been asked. I don't have to go to the lodges. I don't have to attend any meetings. I don't have to go and do rituals. I don't have to do anything. They just send the lessons out in the post, and I review them as I see fit. So for me, that's a safeguard. Which is okay. But sorry, go on.
I had an experience where strange people were turning up when I was here, largely from England, and then I found out. I've mentioned on the shows previously, I see patterns quicker than a lot of other people, and I have a long memory. So it's suddenly I found out after the first one piqued my interest. The second one, I'm thinking something's going on here, and then it came when it became fairly obvious I wasn't going to join the Freemasons. In came 3, 4, and 5. So there was a steady flow of people coming over from England who all mysteriously were all Freemasons, including someone who worked directly in the Grand Lodge in London, one of the biggest places. And I'm thinking, one of them really was trying to introduce the other, and then it just increased. You have to join. I'm going, I'm not joining that, and your rituals and and your dodgy Shriner clubs and all that stuff, but then you learn as you go along. And so we've all been guilty of dismissing things because of the title and the name, and myself included. There is aspects in all these groups. It's like I mentioned about the Illuminati. That was a group that was kind of working against the Catholic Church, and then it gets infiltrated, and so it was an actually good group. And then you go back to the original Illuminati, which was the Gnostics, which is all about knowing and truth. Yep. And illumination. Of course, that's been completely corrupted now. Anything of enlightenment and illumination, no, that's Illuminati. We don't want that, and that's why they do it, because they'll do that where you will avoid it. Yes, you may investigate what they're up to, but you will also avoid taking the leap and going, you know what, like yourself, you took the leap and gone, I'm going to find out about this, on my terms, and and you've done it the right way. You've done it on your terms, not like some of the other groups where you don't have any terms, like sort of Scientology and all those other cultist groups, where you're basically signing your life over, and so it's good because there is, the original Freemasons had the knowledge, and like everything else, they've slowly but surely, with that totalitarian creep, have downgraded it and degraded it to a point where no one wants to touch it. And that's, again, is a way of denying the knowledge. There are Templars, and there are Knights Templars, good Knights Templars, and there's obviously a number of bad ones.
Yes.
And the history of the Templars has been so much distorted. It's
it's crazy.
I know of the Templars that were protecting Magdalene, And then there are others that are ransacking all kinds of places and trying to kill her, you know. Good and bad and everything. But, you know, kudos to you. You've took the time to go and listen and see if it's got validity, and it appears it has. And you know its limitations, and you know the boundaries, which is again important. There's too many people go into things blind and end up getting trapped. A bit like
you've got to be careful.
It's a bit like politicians. You know, not all politicians can be bad, but they're also very naive and fall into the trap far too easily. And you know, that's why we have to, in my opinion, in America and Australia and Britain, is turf them all out. Either find out which ones are actually capable of looking for them by the people, and if they're not, just turf.
And look, we're going to have to step up, aren't we? You know,
yeah.
It's going to be up to us to fill those shoes.
Yeah, it's like I said this the other week. We need the people in the alternative media who have far more knowledge than most people realise, including politicians. But you think Trump knows half of what we know? Think again.
No, that's right.
He hasn't got. It's not his fault. He hasn't got a clue. Obama didn't have a clue either. Because why? Because there's levels of secrecy way above their level. They don't know any of that. But our listeners know. So that can be used in a way where they've got a more expanded view of knowledge and truth. And that should be used going forward.
Yeah, I agree.
Because we know the pitfalls and we know where we can... no, we're not going down our avenue. The cabal went down our avenue, and look where it led to.
And look, we just have to be prepared to move. We're not, you know, I'm coaching beach volleyball. I'm largely not in a position, I'm sure a lot of people are not in a position to make world-changing decisions and agreements and things like that. But as people in the know, you've basically, with the THI show, and I'm sure with Cosmic Voice beforehand and so on, you've prepared us for when the platform exists for us to move. Now, we can't move until the platform exists, but when it does, we have to be ready to move. So get yourself ready. You know, prepare yourself. You can't, you know, I can't go and make anybody do anything, but I'm going to jump in the moment that there's an opportunity to make a difference. I'm straight in. I'm all in. Yeah. So I think that's where we have all of this knowledge, not to make us depressed and all of that, but we know what the problem is.
Yeah.
We know where it's come from, and we now have to prepare ourselves to be the ones that fix it when the platform is established. But I think that some people get a bit depressed because they think that they're supposed to establish the platform to make. You just have to get yourself ready. You have to get yourself ready to move. And I just spend all my time doing that and staying abreast through your show with what's going on. And I'm ready to jump in. And hopefully there'll be an opportunity to do that soon.
Yeah. So we become the change, the way it shows.
Exactly.
You know, and that involves all of us. You know, and people, if you think I can't change the world, you're not ready. No. And there's a lot of people with a lot of knowledge that can't, that won't be ready. Yeah. You're not in. It's that limitation mode again. Little me. What can one person do? One person can change everything. Look what Gandhi did in India. They just down tools, no violence. We're not complying. Yeah. That one man changed India away from British and Dutch stormtroopers. You know, it's so. If you keep applying, keep saying it's just me, and what can I do? Well, what you can do is improve yourself and get yourself ready for whatever role. Don't pigeonhole yourself. well, I'm a painter, or I'm a joiner, or I'm a plumber, or I can only draw. No, you can't. You can do anything you put your mind to. Prepare yourself for that, because the jobs going forward are likely not going to be the jobs now. They're going to be new ways.
And there's your intuition and your soul contract, and getting in. If you prepare yourself properly, you will start to realize what it is that you're here to do. Yeah. And it's there. It's right in front of your face. The things that you love doing, the things that you're good at, what you're attracted to do, all that stuff, and that's what you'll be doing. You have to. Yeah, it's everybody's going to have. They do have the opportunity to make a difference, and I just encourage everybody to prepare themselves in a positive manner for that to come through. And what's the worst that can happen? They'll take you out, or you die before it's ready, and you just come back and start where you left off.
But it's all about creating a legacy to go forward with. Yes. There'll be some members who are near the end of their lives due to age or ill health. I may not see it. There's no guarantee. I think I will, but if I go out knowing that the platform's being built and we have the opportunity, because that's all it is. People seem to think the cabal stepped down and everything is going to be all roses and love and light and all this. No, we have to work even harder, because suddenly we're doing it, not them. People really need to understand that.
I think it's important as well for people to realise that it's not going to happen. The cabal is not going to be removed, and then the changes are going to come in. It's a twofold thing that's occurring. The cabal, there's the front lines where the fight is against them, and that will be continuing. But at some stage, in the background, behind those front lines, the rollout of the new world will begin. But it's important to understand that the rollout will start for the new world before the old structure is completely destroyed. There's not going to be a vacuum there. The two things are going to be occurring simultaneously, and then hopefully, like a huge snowball, is the wave of the new things as it rolls out will quash what's left of the cabal. But people are thinking people are sometimes in the wrong mindset of thinking they have to be completely wiped out to give us an opportunity to do something, and that's not the case.
No.
We're going to be, things are going to start, and they'll start, but it won't be pretty necessarily in other aspects. But it's going to start anyway.
Yeah, it's a phasing in and phasing out. I've said this many times, because we've had so much of the event. There is no the event. Some of the events have already started. They've already happened. and if you weren't paying attention, you kind of missed them. So it's a phasing in and phasing out. And a lot of their people, which is like a double-edged sword, have now stepped down and are helping us, which is a double gain. It's a win-win. Not only have they stepped down, they're actually helping. And this is the key, and this is why I mentioned it earlier, and I keep mentioning it on the show, about the 100 series, when they say, where's all the good people? And you go, there is none. Why? Because we have to create them. We have to put forward people that are good, and get the best thing you can do with that is to make the bad ones work for the good side, because they know all the inner structure or pieces of it, and they can advise. They're doing this and they're doing that, and we can go here and fix this and fix that, and then it's just slowly but surely it phases in as they fade out, and what will be left is a core of total psychopaths, which is basically the core of them anyway, who have no intentions of stepping down, but they'll have no power and no control over anything, and that's diminishing by the day, in fact by the hour. And they know
and
it.
Of course,
we know it.
And of course society will be different, and the programming as such, people will be being brought up under freedom and sovereignty and prosperity and abundance. They're not going to tolerate some idiot coming out and wanting to put up signs and fine you and take your children away. It's not going to, it won't be tolerated. No. So, and they'll die out, and that'll be that. But we're just going to have to remember and record and remember everything that's happened so it doesn't happen again, as you say. I mean, we are responsible for it not happening again as well. So once, the place is cleaned up, we've got to be very vigilant in making sure we don't get complacent and allow that to happen.
Yeah, in essence, we cannot replicate the cabal. The cabal, the human versions anyway, replicated the off-world, and it didn't work.
Right.
And what we mustn't do is replicate them, with the emphasis on titles. Titles are not important. It's what the person does that counts. It's not, I'm important. No, it's what important things am I doing, and that's the way forward for us all. Are we gonna because, for argument's sake, one of the members gets put president of the United States, is your ego going to go out of balance and you're going to turn into a bloody megalomaniac and replicate them? Or are you going to do and be the calm, balanced person that we've tried to teach with the shows and not replicate their behaviour?
Well, I think, you've been preparing us all in that way. You know how you said before that, well, two things that you've said is, one, this is a disclosure process, which is, it's a slow, piece-by-piece disclosure process coming through the show. But secondly, it's been largely done intuitively. So you're a conduit for a disclosure that's occurring through you, which is then presented through the show. And it's preparing us all. And I think, I've got a lot out of it personally. It's been the show has been the thing that has got me through not deciding to go on a wild rampage and enter the halls of Canberra where the fat politicians reside with a kitchen knife. So, so I decided to be more productive than that.
Yeah, good. Right, we're going to have another music break, and then we'll come back with more from Hayden. And this is Two Steps from Hell Again, and a musical piece called The Unforgiven. We'll be back shortly. Hi all, and welcome back to the final portion of tonight's show with Hayden Ellis. And we've covered the gamut of things. It's a bit like a Thursday show, really, with an extra voice, an extra helper, and that's good. Where are we? What are we going to cover next? Self-healing. That's what I'd like to hear.
Yes, well, this is not a very long story. It was pretty straightforward. I had a very self-administered, very bad back injury from doing some fairly extreme forms of training that weren't suited to my long body, and it lasted for about 7 years. I had this back injury. It was pretty much 7 years, and I coached right through that whole period. I did my black belt karate grading with the back injury and so forth. But and I tried all manner of things to fix it. I'd been to Raoul, and he hadn't been able to fix it. But at that time, unbeknownst to both of us, he was becoming ill. So he ended up dying of cancer, and I think that perhaps his life force was waning at that point, and I was able to get relief and that sort of things, but I couldn't fix it. And then I think it might have been Deepak Chopra's Ageless Body, Timeless Mind, where I read that the human body, the cells that make up the human body, are replenished every 7 years. That might not be true.
Yeah.
But that's what I thought was the case. And so I just made the decision that if it's been 7 years that I've had this back injury, and therefore every cell in my body has been replaced. Therefore, if the injury is still continuing, it's because I'm holding the memory of the injury in the cells.
Yeah.
And so I just made the decision that at the 7-year point, I refuse to have the injury continue, and that all of the new cells that are forming should form perfectly back to the way that they were. And that's exactly what happened. And I haven't had the back injury since. After 7 years, I'm back to full health. I play beach volleyball. I jump around like a maniac and train martial arts. And as a 48-year-old, I'm still leap around like a 20-year-old lunatic. So
that's good. And it's kind of living proof, if you like, of what we've been saying in the shows. You can and are capable of so much more if all it takes is belief and trust in yourself. And this is one of the biggest problems people face. They don't trust themselves. And if you don't trust yourself, then you're always allowing a saviour program in. So somebody else, you put your trust in somebody else. And unfortunately, most of us have had that experience. We put trust in people and they've let us down. Maybe that's a lesson that you have to, if you keep repeating it, is you have to learn to trust yourself more. Because people
totally agree.
And so if you can do that, then all you have to do, a lot of the problem also is people, it's like people say to me, how can you go out? I can go out because I believe I can go out. I believe I can bilocate, or I can believe I can heal, whichever subject you're talking about. It's because I believe I can do that. Those things happen. But people say, well, you can't do this and you can't do that. Says who? Them? Or you? And so many examples of people doing with abilities that they deny themselves because they don't believe in themselves and they don't trust themselves, because everything is limitation and giving your power away to religious groups or presidents or whoever, when everything you need, and this is, again, it goes back to THI, everything you need, I keep telling you, is inside of you. It's not external, where some God sitting on a cloud passing judgments on you. It's internal. It always was.
Yeah,
and that's the important key. And I'm really pleased that you've been able to do what you've done, and not only that, you're helping others do the same. Because this is how we develop, where we all pass on our knowledge and develop together. But don't expect miracles overnight. You have to work at it. Hayden's worked at many things, and I know he will have failed many times, but he didn't allow that failure to stop him. He kept going, and that's the key to everything. We keep going. You're always going to get knocked down. This is the way this planet works. It's knockdown after knockdown and rejection, and so you end up giving up. That's the worst thing anyone can ever do. And you just got to keep going, and if it doesn't work the first time, try it again, and try it again. I hear people saying, I can't meditate. Well, keep trying. Keep trying. Because eventually you will get it. Yeah.
It's a skill, you've got to learn it.
Yeah. So, now you've been able to regenerate the cells and the back's okay, and you're continuing with the... Where are you actually at now with the sport? Are you just playing, or are you still coaching?
I made the decision when I started coaching not to play.
Yeah.
Because I had... that would be a conflict of interest as far as I saw it. If I go out and beat the guys that I'm training, that's not really fair, and everything that I teach them, I know how to dismantle it. So I made the decision early on, and at the time I was wanting to play golf anyway, so I thought, well, I'll just, and I was trying to do as little coaching as possible, but then when Mum got sick and then she died, I ended up doing it, taking it on, and I just saw it, well, perhaps as I became a little bit more worldly about things to do with soul contracts and so forth, I thought perhaps I'm supposed to do it, but it was largely through beach volleyball that I ended up meeting Zuzanda, and that was before, it was a number of years ago now, perhaps 4 years ago or more, and he flew to Melbourne, and being as well versed as he is in all things to do with soul contracts and spirituality and so forth, he knew I had some part to play in something he was doing, and we went to a football match here, an Australian rules football match, and he said, so what can you do? What are you supposed to do? And I had no idea. So the job interview works along the premise of, you tell me what you're supposed to do, as opposed to, here's the role, which was quite interesting. And I think we'd had, Sue's had a lot of interesting people, which I'm sure you know that he's been involved with and so forth, and not all of them good guys. But now he's involved with some very, really good things that are going on in the background, and I guess through my own truth-seeking and my relentless pursuit, I've put myself in a position where I'm able to make a contribution to that, and I'm forever grateful, because I now understand everything that I've been through has prepared me to make the contribution that I'm about to make. Yeah. And I think anybody that's part of the group is going to have an opportunity at some stage to make a contribution, and sooner or later, and the whole idea is to get yourself ready. That's what I've done. And I remember getting to my lowest point, and I came across some book on the internet, Kindle book, that was talking about creating a sort of a sanctuary for yourself, and going and meditating there and asking the questions that you want to ask, and then writing down the answers to those questions. And I remember I was in an apartment in Sydney, and I didn't have anywhere I could really go. So I just had this red mat on the floor, and I decided that if I stand on that mat or I sit on that mat, that's the safe point, and that's where I go, the sanctuary, and that's where I'll go, and I'll ask these questions. And I sat down and I was asking questions about what am I meant to do? I'm gaining all this knowledge and all this stuff, and I feel myself drawn to finding out what's going on. And of course I'm writing down all of these stupid things, like, I want to live here, and I want to do this, and I want to perform, I want to play this sport, and I'm writing all of this stuff down. And this went on for a couple of weeks, where I was doing this every day, and just meaningless drivel. And eventually I sat down one time, and it was really quiet. I remember feeling really quiet, and I wrote down 3 things that came to mind. The first one was, you are safe. So it wasn't me writing in the first person anymore. Yeah. You are safe, and I wrote that down. And then you are loved, and I wrote that down. And then the third thing was, you are guided at all times. Yep. And so I never went back and did it again. After that, I never sat on the mat again. I just took that page out. And those 3 things became the guiding basis for how I lived from that point, and got me through, I guess, the darkest period. And because I think everything that I was experiencing and everything that I was feeling was first and foremost because I didn't feel safe. Yeah. I didn't feel safe because I was discovering all of this truth about how the world operates. And because I didn't feel safe and I knew I hadn't gotten to the bottom of it all, you start becoming paranoid and I think everybody that's in the group will definitely have experienced it. But when I got those 3 points given to me, I realised then that I was being spoken to by my higher self or oversoul or whatever source or whatever, but there was definitely a guiding benevolent influence. Yeah. And I thought if that guiding benevolent influence is telling me that I'm safe and that I'm loved and that I'm guided, then I better listen, because I now have a choice to dismiss it as rubbish or to adopt it as a principle. So I adopted it, and then just adhering to that, I then had to answer the question of, I guess, why am I here? And that was answered in a similar fashion without using the matter or anything, but in a similar fashion, like a triangle of response was, I'm here to lead, teach and inspire, being the upward triangle. And then if you essentially invert that, the opposite of it is, the opposite to leading is to follow your heart. So I'm here to follow my heart. The opposite to teaching is to learn. I'm here to learn. And the opposite of inspiring others is to be inspired. And so that's the 6 things, the 6 reasons that I'm here. There's a soul contract, and I'm here both to be of service to self, in the sense that I evolve myself, my soul evolution, and I'm learning from others, and I'm here as service to others, as part of my soul contract. The reason why I incarnated in the first place. And so it's, you're here both to serve others and to evolve. That's essentially what you're doing.
Yeah, as you evolve, you are helping others, because people forget. They think, imagine somebody who lives in the woods on their own, there's no one for miles around, that they can't have an influence. But by being yourself and remembering who and what you are, you're already influencing, because that field goes out. And this is what we try to teach in the shows, as you know. People are looking for in essence, the 3D effects, the 5 senses effects. So they have to go and verbally talk to people and get them to understand, or they have to go and meet people, or they have to campaign to the government. It's all.
I think we do it. I think we do a lot of it in our sleep.
Exactly. It's the subconscious, that's the key. The more you get in touch with yourself, the more you read it. You've been in touch with yourself, and it's been read back to you. Yes,
exactly. The 100 monkeys, one side of the island, the monkey takes a rock and cracks the nut open, and without them going and having formulating governmental committees on the other side of the island, the consciousness, it pervades through the consciousness of the monkeys, and then on the other side of the island, they haven't met each other, and some monkey goes and grabs a rock and cracks the nut open. You evolve yourself, and you're evolving the collective consciousness. It's you're having that influence, as you say.
Absolutely. Right, we're nearing the. My stats went over quick, near 3 hours.
Well, sorry about that.
No, that's fine. No, it's fine. We are we can go on for 4.
All these poor people that have been waiting for the shutdown update.
No.
Sorry about that.
No, it's fine. It's your show, and I think a lot of members will get a lot of value out of this, and I hope you continue to develop, and I hope you gain the opportunities we all do to make the real change. I'd like you to have some final thoughts, and then we'll play your final song.
My final thoughts are just of thanks to you and to Chloe and to the rest of the THI crew, and to the members for being brave enough to search and find the truth, and now you know it. You just don't let it beat you. It's the platform upon which that we know we're going to build a new world. And for the CIA listening to this, you know you're beaten, and there's nothing you can do. There's nothing you can do. So bad luck.
and I agree with that. The clowns,
the clown.
Even the parent Cassandra sent messages last week. She doesn't like what's going on either. Pity about her, but this is what this show's all about. It's about everyone. Everyone has a voice, and it's important everyone has a voice, and it's important everyone really trusts themselves. It is the key, and you can be doing things that you may not think are important, but they are important on a massive scale, and that's fixing yourself. And Hayden has been the prime example tonight. He's been through various tests and stages, had many disappointments along the way, and injuries and strange occurrences, and trying to make sense of life, and then finds his path. And that's basically what we all hope to achieve, is finding your path. Many think that THI is the path, and I tend to agree. We are different in this group. We're not better, we're just different. And more and more you are echoing the same feelings, and we've all had similar experiences. And the more that people unburden themselves of those experiences, the more confidence you gain, and then the world's your oyster, as they say, and we can go forward with a brighter future with people who have gained the knowledge, have worked on themselves so that they're in balance. Because you can't go into a new system out of balance. You'll just replicate what they've done. And so it's important that we produce sufficient people who are in balance, in harmony with everything, and we will go forward with a brighter future, and we will get that. A lot depends on how ugly it gets between now and then. We've already won, as Hayden said. We have already won, but we're holding on to the thought form and the projection in many ways that we haven't, and we have to remember that and push it forward slowly. People don't like to hear that, but it's moving ultra quickly in real time. We're not operating in real time. Thank you, Aidan, and
thank you, Thomas.
We will be speaking again, no doubt, soon. And I'm going to play your final song, which is Nina Simone, "Feeling Good." I think most people feel good about this show, and reading some of the comments, they've all enjoyed it, so thank you for that. And we'll speak again soon.
Thanks, Thomas. Bye-bye.
Bye for now. Right, here's what we're going to do now is play Hayden's final song, and then I'm going to play another song which leads us into this piece, which is kind of where we're at now and what we could expect to go, that could unfold. Everything can change in an instant, and I will warn of that. But first we're going to play Hayden's final song, "Feeling Good." Thanks for listening to An Evening with Thomas and Hayden Ellis. The next portion is about the shutdown, and we're going to play a music piece first. You'll get reason why. Hi all, and welcome back. I hope you enjoyed that show. I did. I thought he came across very, very well, and also explained some experiences that a lot of people may be reticent to speak about. And it's surprising, and I do know you've all had those experiences. You're kidding no one. You're not in this group. You think that you're in this group by accident. You're not. So I hope that gives you the courage. Right, of course, we've had a government shutdown. And I want to preface this for the simple reason is we have to realise where we're at. We can't carry on masking the truth. And this is a brutal truth of what's going on currently. And there are good things happening. So I don't want it to look in any way that nothing's good's happening, because there is. On many, many levels. Unfortunately, as I mentioned in Hayden's show, it's all at the higher end level. They're not 3D level as such. On the ground, it's still brutal. And I'm not going to fall into line with the hopium that this is taking place and that's taking place when there's zero evidence that any of it's taken place. There is other stuff taking place that is not on the internet. I do know it's happening. But people have said, I've asked recently, why are our shows heavy, unpleasant, and in a way brutal to hear? One simple reason. Because you're hearing the truth. Not the flowery stage show style bullshit. We can all put that out. Truth is brutal. And we warned about the shutdown. We've warned about the financial issues, and people, most believe it and some don't. How can they not have any money? Because it's all gone. And he couldn't carry on operating on credits when there's no credit lines left. And I've been telling you this for 12, 18 months. And I know we all get sick of waiting. But eventually there is a finality to it. And the shutdown has arrived under a Republican government. But people say, but it's the Dems' fault, blah, blah, blah. Or perhaps it was the Liberals. Or perhaps it's the left. Or the right. Or the Conservatives. Or just maybe it's the people's fault for voting for these Hall of Mirror charlatans. To the 47% who exercised their choice in the last election, kudos to you all. You get it. Blue pill or red pill, Republican or Democrat, Labour or Conservative. You do all realise by now that they are not choices. If not, you need to think again. Those choices are what the system gives you. And too many, even in THI, swallow it all up and then wonder why everything goes wrong. Because you repeat the same situations over and over again. And this is why I said in our first THI show, we have to think and act different. We can't carry on repeating the same things over and over again and expecting different results. And like I said in the last few shows, things are dire. And the latest budget, in inverted commas, attempt was doomed to failure. Due to a lack of funds and a lack of credit lines. It ran out. Now the reality is we haven't had a real budget in years. It's all mirror accounting. Now the mirrors have gone. And the stark reality of our situation is there for all to see. Even for the clowns. Of course, what happens now is the blame game will start and finger pointing will go off the charts. And yet, despite a large awakening of many people, too many still see politicians, be it Trump or other, as our way forward to fix things. This is a poor failure of our alternative community, in my opinion, and a cognitive dissonance on a far too large scale. Have you noticed every budget debate bill has a contentious issue in it that has all sides fighting? Every single one. Why is that? It's simple. It causes the political and the alternative media masses to fight and argue with each other over that contentious issue, whilst they get on with their hidden agendas. They know it's nothing to do with budgets. That's why they put the contentious issue in every budget, so they argue over it. And it's all played out drama. Every single budget, a contentious bill is inserted into it. Now the point remains, at what point does it take for all of us to see that that is a deliberate ploy? To just use it like a tennis match of bashing the narrative back and forth, and the public fall for it every time. It's the Dems' fault. No, it's Trump's fault. Repeat and rinse over and over again. It's all a staged, managed theatre. A Punch and Judy puppet show. All these mass arrests, probes, investigations, part disclosures, exposures, leaks here, leaks there, are all part of their game, not ours. The real leaks and the real exposures and the real arrests are all being done in private. But it's all designed to keep you occupied whilst they play let's F the world up. And it's time we woke up to that reality. Now, they have literally drawn the line in the sand now. We drew their line in the sand a number of months, years ago. And arresting Clinton, Mueller, McCain, Trump, or any other will hardly cause a ripple in real terms. Why? Because those names are a mere footnote in the control system. Puppets for the hidden clowns. All of them. So, where are we now? In reality, we're up shit's creek without a paddle. Funds from anywhere now, except the World Trust, are gone. The cabal can't pay their own people. Why do you think they're bumping them off? Why do you think they're leaking stuff? So they can get rid of some of their puppets. They can't pay their own people, and they haven't done, in some cases, for a few years, including the Clinton News Network, CNN. They just dupe the idiots with payments in dinars. Yes, you, with your badges, sitting there with your fistful of dinars waiting for your payout. It's not happening. And they tell them those dinars will be highly valuable shortly. The reality is they won't. It's all an illusion. So our criminal military, Pentagon, all agencies and politicians have sold us out down the river. Now, there are good people in all of those departments. Make no mistake about that. A lot of them are at high risk. A lot of good people. But also, like the very few in the alternative media who try to tell you the truth, they lack solid support from the masses. and have left not only the American people in dire straits, but also the world. Why? It's because those people and departments are the system. Whether you like that fact or not, I've been telling you all along since I came here, they are the problem. No ifs, no buts. If you had any doubt, the last shred of doubt went with the last intel report on Thursday. This country was hijacked in silent mode whilst the populace slept. Most of the above named are not even under an oversight committee. Hence, they are a law unto themselves. And we've all seen that unfold and questioned why and how. It's simple. They are not affiliated to America, the country, or its interest. A private for hire group intent only on global domination. American patriots? My ass they are. They sold us out. Now they've been given the real solutions of a way forward. They have delayed, blocked and hindered all attempts at progress for the benefit of the people. Again, do people not see every single kicking the can down the road budget is predominantly for military purposes? There's extra budgets laid on, more debt piled onto the country, and 50 to 60% of that extra budget or extra debt is military. Every single budget they take huge slices of the pie, and what do we get in return? Nothing of any real value to the people. And how long does it take before people see and get that? We are fighting for freedoms, national security, blah, blah, blah. And the people, like the districts in Hunger Games, all gobble it up all too easily. 81 countries invaded since World War II our military have been used for. To what end? Have American lifestyles improved? No. So why are we allowing all of our money to be used in this way? And in case people forget, governments and banks don't have money. They have our money, not theirs. You'd be amazed that the vast majority don't even comprehend that simple fact. And I'm tired of my taxes and contributions to this country going to and for rogue elements that have no connection to this country whatsoever. None. And I've only lived here for 16 years. What about the ire of the people who were born here and paid all their lives? Where's their anger? Where's their outrage? Why are you still giving your sons and daughters over to these as sacrificial lambs, soul dyers for these entities that are not even affiliated with America? They're nothing to do with us. Even going by their own statistics, and we all know how clever and deceitful they can be with that. But the figures they have given is 9 million American lives have been sacrificed in wars since World War II. 9 million. Fighting in wars against countries of which not one of them had attacked our country. Not one. 9 million of our sons and daughters sacrificed for nothing, and we still carry on waving our stupid foreign-based flags and worshipping our foreign-ran military, and no one looks and thinks, is that entity the problem? And what about the ones that return? They come back scarred, maimed, drug-riddled, mentally scarred, homeless, and left with no support. It's fucking shameful. I'm sorry to use bad language, but it's fucking shameful. And people sit there arguing over politics and politicians. Drama here, drama there. Ooh, Trump tweeted this and Q encrypted that, while they trample all over you into the ground with your consent. Enough. I've been accused of being negative and all doom in recent shows. Maybe now you'll all understand why. This is not a happy place or world. It's riddled with psychos at the highest level that we have allowed to carry on trampling on us largely unhindered. Not no more, we're not. But can we change things here? Yes, we can. But not repeating the same habits and program we've all followed, expecting change with no new input. This is the definition of insanity. So what can happen and what should happen? Well, what can happen now is there's a possibility of all government checks not being delivered. Many jobs will be laid off. Banks can shut down without notice. I would suggest that was more likely than not. And it's best to be cautious and safe with your money than wait. Inflation can rise through the roof. Anarchy and rioting on the streets can unfold, particularly if the banks shut. In other words, we become the new Venezuela. And 1929 may well be repeated. May, not will. Except this time we have a lot more people to feed and supply than back in 1929. And if 1929 repeats takes place, and as it stands now it certainly looks that way, will arresting Clinton or anyone else matter? Well, it's okay, we're all dying, but hey, at least we arrested Anne or McCain or even Bush. All of those issues now are a complete distraction. Just maybe that was a distraction all along, so they can cover up. They've got nothing left. They've stolen everything. A distraction of what we face globally. An American shutdown leads to a global shutdown. 85% of all trade and transactions is done with the dollar. So it impacts all the other countries. I hope people have cash, some metals and food to last at least a month. But I also hope people who are in dire straits can be helped by those within CHI. Reach out to each and every one of them. And we look after each other and not fall into the same mire many of the rest of the populace will exhibit of everyone for themselves. The group was set up in a way where we all look after ourselves. It's heaven forbid politicians have any interest in looking after you. They just don't. Given what we've been told in the intel parts of many shows, I would like to see a budget drafted up by Mr. Trump and whoever else, minus all military funding. And I mean all. Cancel all foreign bases. Cancel all UN and NATO payments. Cancel all foreign aid, none of which goes to the people, but only to fellow despots to carry out their globalism agenda. Cut it all off. Vast quantities of our money have been paid for every single war in the last 70 to 80 years. Our money, not theirs. And it doesn't matter where the war takes place. We, the American people, have paid for it. All of it. With no return or benefit for us, or for that matter, any other people around the world. And people think that's harsh. I'll remind you of one thing. The people I'm talking about cutting off altogether, these are the same people that lost, lost 23.5 trillion of our money. That's more than the national debt. And not one single head has rolled for that loss. Not one. And we entrust them to run and operate our country? If you stole $23.50 out of your work, do you think you'd survive in your job? No. If you stole 5 cents from work, would you survive in your job? No. These goons lost $23.5 trillion of our money. And are still sitting there, pushing their pens with their fancy badges for killing people. In 1990, the USA GDP, Global Domestic Payments Product, whatever it's called, which means all the money spent in the country, was $6 trillion. 1990, before the Gulf War. Now it's 18.5 trillion, and it doesn't last the whole year. In comparison, China, in 1990, the US was 6 trillion. China's GDP was 360 billion. Now it's 11 trillion. So how is it our budget is 7.5 trillion more than China, with only a quarter to a third of the population? I'll tell you why. Because here in America, it's all about war money spending. War, and more fucking war. That's all we hear. Military budget this, let's have security for this, national security, blah, blah, blah. Well, enough of that shit. Cut it all off. Then there's enough for everybody. They're not there for our benefit. That's quite clear now. We want our money back to spend on rebuilding, shelter, food, health cure, that strange thing, perhaps some of the doctors might realise and train on it, and health care, development and cleaning up. All those things that are beneficial for the people. Not clowns running around with tanks and $4 billion jets. You can't eat them. And not on spying, research of how to weaponize everything, war, destruction, death. This is the path of the compassionless, psychotic, lower vibration people and synths. And I, for one, have had enough of it. Cut the military budget down to zero until they learn how to act on behalf and the benefits of the American people. That's how you solve budget problems. One swipe of the pen. If they're not prepared to stand up for the American people, we're not prepared to fund them. We're just not. Work will go on. Negotiations are still going on. The reality is we can play the long game. I know people might not like to hear that, but we can play the long game. They can't. They've got nothing left. And it all depends on how ugly it gets between now and the transition where they're less in control and we're more in control. We will show the way. They are not the world. They never were. The answer is we are. This has been Thomas Williams and THI. Bye for now.